Welcome to Flat Earth Debate, Uncut and After Show. I'm your host Nathan Oakley, and if you are new to this channel, or you've not done so already, then be sure to subscribe, hit the bell notification icon, and join button if you'd like to become a Nathan Oakley 1980 channel member and keep up to date with the Flat Earth Debate. If you would like to support the channel, there is a super chat that runs alongside each of these shows while they premiere, and there's also a PayPal, Patreon, crypto, and thanks button in the info box below the video. Speaking of Patreons, I'm going to do a quick shout out to all of you who do support me on Patreon. So a massive shout out of thanks and appreciation to... Page loaded, see how slick I am. Chris Wouters, Amashertha, Naughty Thumbnails, Mitch Kennedy, Rod, The Name's Burley, Todd Wazzle, Jason Hornsby, Christoph Fournier, Flat Earth Travolta, JMel24, Unimento, M Iron26, Eric Troche, Endless, Flat Earth Sage, Golden McKeon, and Retro Bill. Level Plain Poem, Cannabear, Michael Kahn, John Kays, Patrick Gunnels, Banter, Mel B. Styles, Harry Blade, Mobile Max 777, Rob W. Reese Pound, Del West Watson, Unbelievable Productions, Blue Ridge Ranger, Abraham Mohammed, Skeptic 936, Life is Short, Texas Mike, Tina Baker, David Wayne Foster, and Dank. So another massive thank you to all of you for supporting me on Patreon. Now I will hand over to whoever is in Discord and Google so you can enjoy their dulcet tones while I set up for today's live show. Come again, did you say something?
Yeah, like, are you like a morning person? Do you get up really early, or do you get up closer to the afternoon or afternoon? When do you get up?
No, and I've got 2 kids, so I get up at the crack of dawn every day.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say. He's got kids, righteous.
Yeah, I got a cat, and I get at the crack of dawn too.
It depends
Actually,
what's
before
going
the
on,
crack
really.
of dawn.
So sometimes I'll beat the kids up, and it freaks them out. So sometimes I'll get up at like 5:30. It depends what's going on.
Okay.
My wife's just said if they take that as a soundbite, beat as in I am up before they am, before they are. Okay, you'd have to correct me on my grammar too. My wife sat in. Haven't you finished work already? Shouldn't you be in the other room? Anyway, beat my kids up to awakeness or breakfast, yeah? Doesn't mean the soundbite that my wife said if you trim that out, it sounds like you're beating them, given that people accuse me of beating my kids.
Well, you're not recording. It's just me and Steven here, so
No, I am recording.
And that's what I was
No, I am
laughing
recording.
at.
Oh, okay.
So, yes. Anyway, yeah, sometimes I don't care, beat my kids up in terms of wake up first, as my wife's now telling me to rephrase it. And my eldest daughter will come in because she's normally in by about 6 o'clock, and she'll see me sat here. Normally, it's either one of two things: messing around with a computer that doesn't work, or editing videos because a computer that doesn't work has completely failed, and I've now got to mitigate for the losses of live streams by being up at 5:30 in the morning editing videos all day. So, and that's when it's quietest. So I'll sometimes beat my 2 children to, how do I rephrase that? I wake up first. Beat them to the punch. I don't care. I don't beat them, so who cares? Shouldn't have to carefully phrase what I say about my kids, right? If someone wants to misconstrue it because they can hear a noise in the background as they've accused me of beating kids based on that, that's resulted in them not being in the room while the show goes on. That's all that's resulted in. Now, if I'd have just allowed them to continue being in the room as I did when that happened, yeah, it wouldn't have mattered which one, that whatever person decided to accuse me of beating my kids, because they've heard screams, bangs, and what they're saying is slaps. Like, I don't, so who cares?
Well, that was a long time ago.
Yeah, it was.
What was a
That was
long
like-
time ago? When I used to allow my eldest to be in the room?
Yeah.
Yeah, it was. I mean, they're still
Because
do
your
now, they're
daughters-
just a lot quieter. Well, the youngest one isn't.
Well, they're almost like 8. We were like, watch your kids grow up. Or, well, I mean, not, but
You don't have to watch what you say.
Yeah.
You don't have to be careful about what you say.
yeah. Well, everyone knows now, it's like 10 years, out here.
Not really. Like, when did he start? Like 2017?
No.
Like the FED
Well,
section? The FED
Oh,
portion was
FED, yeah.
2017?
Maybe before that, but yeah, I mean, I was doing this in 2014.
Yeah, because I remember seeing some like really old footage of you interviewing people.
Yeah, that's not really old
Oh,
footage. It just aged badly. So yeah, thanks a lot. I would say the majority of that aging has been in the last year.
Mm.
Speaking of which, I went down to see Craig today. So I woke up today and my wife, I was actually woken up by my wife as we were talking about that. And she was like, computer won't come on, which is, I said it in a members video. It's like part of the course. First thing you wake up to is broken computer. So I was like, oh, okay, thanks for letting me know before I've even woken up. But like I said, that was after everyone else had got up already. So rather than launching into, has my members stream from yesterday, has the after show actually been published properly? Have I got to go back in and fix corrupted uploads? I didn't do any of that, so I actually don't know. So maybe, are any of you members? Can you tell me if the after show was actually uploaded yesterday? No?
Oh,
Okay,
no.
well, don't worry about it.
Is
Again, Neil.
What's that, Neil?
what the hell is that link you sent me? To a studio?
This is not the link, you say?
It's a freaking studio thing.
Okay, I'll copy the joining link again and send it.
Yeah, it looks right now.
Studio. Oh, it's sending you to. Oh, okay. Yes, that's right. I did copy that into my. It's sent. It won't let you in, but it was trying to get you into the bit that I used to set up the show, which is called Studio, in YouTube. Right? It found you in a weird place in YouTube. Oh, he's not even talking to me. He's just immediately left because he's got an actual link now. How rude.
Well, just don't let him in, and then he'll have to talk from Discord.
Why are you asking what time I got up? Because that's been like a 10-minute conversation waffling about me getting up to do edited videos, or me not getting up because I've been woken up by a broken computer, or
Well, it's just
reminiscing about what. Go on.
It's because you're like in the UK and it's afternoon for you and it's morning for me, and it's just kind of. I've been following you for a while, so like I kind of know you, so I'm just kind of making small chat, right? I'm like,
Right.
what's it like in a day of Nathan Oakley, so to say, right?
Okay, well, it's 1:30 now. So far today, I drove to a different town, which is about an hour's drive away, but didn't make it because they'd closed a very, very important road with no warning. So after a whole bunch of roadworks slowing me down all the way through this road, eventually road closed. No diversion, nothing. So I'm fiddling around with the sat nav as time's ticking by, and eventually it got to the point where I'm like, okay, I'm about, let's call it half an hour away, and I've got about 10 minutes before this lesson my daughter's supposed to be in starts. So I phoned my wife and said, all the roads are closed, there's roadworks everywhere, and it's taking me around and round in circles back to the diversion point, or no diversion point, the road closed point. Anyway, I'm coming home because I'm not going to make it in time. So that was my morning until I was like, well, at this point I can actually go to the shop, which is Craig's shop, to talk computer. Admittedly, with my daughter running around a computer shop with lots of delicate circuit boards everywhere, although she was very good. Anyway, and then he put me in front of a load of trade price lists on his computer screen with all these different motherboards on them. I'm scrolling through them, and there's like this vast, wide range of prices from 300 quid up to £1,000, and everything in between. And when you see one, they all look the same, and you're like, I don't know what I'm looking at. It's just what do you recommend? What would you put in? So eventually, he just popped onto a particular one, showed me that, told me how much it was, and I wrote it down, and that was it. Came home. What have I done since? Made several cups of coffee. Released a video that I'd edited in one of those 5 a.m. sessions or 5:30 or whatever it was. I got up when I would get up before the kids.
I heard you, righteous.
Heard what?
Don't let him in part.
Yeah. I heard you, wise ass. Yeah, it took me to some studio thing, and I'm trying to get in thinking it's some new thing.
No, what it took, I just happened to, I have two instances of that particular piece of software. The reason I have redundancy, right, it's another computer failure related issue. This computer often will just fail on one screen. Or it did before I replaced the second graphics card with a third graphics card, and it hasn't actually done that since. So, but that's recent. Recently, it hasn't been doing that, but typically it will potentially lose one screen. Now, if I'm live streaming when that happens, it's disaster because you can't see what's going out to the audience, which is literally disaster. And I need one on both screens in case one or the other screen fails. Yeah, which means I can still press the stop button if need be. But yeah, there's been various points in this computer's life that I've relinquished all control of the live show because I haven't had a second instance of live studio, or studio it's just called. That was what I happened to be copying and pasting when I... Yeah, I'm going to bore the pants off my audience if I keep waffling on about mitigations for failing computers, which is all I've done so far. Although I haven't, have I? We've been talking about something else. We're talking about getting up in the morning. It's because I've also just done a video log for members, Neil. Are you a member?
I was, but nobody's purchased me another membership.
How
So I
dare
guess
they?
I'm not anymore.
How dare they? Anyway, I'll find out if my members stream from yesterday has gone up or not. I don't know if that's the case. Anyway, that's it. That's a day. That's most days.
Okay, so you have like a pretty head start. You do like a bunch of stuff before you do your show. It's like your show is like your wind down almost.
Yeah, that's the most relaxing part. This is the most relaxing part of my day. I get to sit here, and because I've got to set it up such that I don't have to do anything on camera, I am essentially sat just on a nice comfy chair for this. Once the live stream's set up, because obviously I've just told you about various different bits of faff that I have to endure to get it all set up. But once it is, it just runs. You know, I've got my buttons on my stream deck, and I can, from muscle memory, just press whatever button I need to do to transition screens and such. Start the live stream, stop the live stream, start the recording, stop the stop the recording. It's actually quite comfy sat here.
Yeah, that's good.
Like your big comfy chair?
Yeah, I mean, it takes a lot of work to get to that point, but once it's like a pilot, right? If you think about a pilot, they're filling out forms and they're setting up stuff and they're doing checklists while they're on the ground. Then they're starting up giant, terrifying engines and making sure they work. But once they get the roll going and they're in the air and the gears retracted and they're at their altitude, in other words, there's quite a lot of faff. Once they're there, that's it, right? They're on autopilot. They can have a cup of tea. They can change staff if they need to on a long haul flight. There's a lot of things that can be, you know, put it in context. I remember one pilot being interviewed and he was saying that long haul with commercial or with passengers was endless hours of monotony punctuated by seconds or moments of sheer terror. In other words, there's a few moments in his career where things have gone wrong, at which case it is, for a few moments, absolutely terrifying. But for the majority of the time, it's fairly monotonous. But there are heavy workload moments for a pilot when they take off or land, right? Well, for me, it's the same for the show. You know, getting it all set up and getting everything ready, checking that the computer won't fall over in that process is kind of similar to starting up your engines and getting everything all set with checklists and checking everything off and making sure it's all ready to go before I've even pressed record. So then by the time I press record, now, for instance, there's there's a whole bunch of videos that are ready to rock and roll that I've had from yesterday's show that I've got pre-queued up. So when the live stream does start, I haven't got to start messing around in Skype to find them, if that makes sense.
So your takeoff is sheer terror, and your landing, ending the show, is sheer terror. But otherwise, it's smooth sailing, you're saying?
Well, no, the landing can be perfectly fine. But like I say, if I lose one screen and it's got OBS and studio on it, then I've essentially lost control of the plane, haven't I?
I got you. Did I tell you the one time I was flying back from Texas and there was going to be like a 6-hour delay and we're sitting in a plane already. So the pilot comes over. He says they don't want me to take off, but I am going to take off anyway because I'm not going to sit here for 6 hours, something to that effect. This guy was like a cowboy, but you know what? I felt he was confident, and I went to sleep. And the stories they tell me, he was flying through storms that were insane, and we landed perfect. But I felt safe. The guy knew what he was doing, so he was taking the plane up. I went to sleep.
And
No, we landed. It was fine. But my wife was telling me that you you were sleeping through freaking the storm that was like scaring the hell out of everybody. She's like, "How can you do that?" I was like, "Come on, the guy's confident. If he says he's taking a plane up, I'm sure he knows what he's doing. I'd be scared if the guy says, 'Oh, we got to sit here. I'm not going to chance going through this storm.' No way. Guy's confident. He's got ability. He's a pilot." Anyway,
I mean,
that was just my thing.
I didn't stress on I did so many takeoff and landings when I was a rep. It was endless. I was always on planes, but the only bit that stressed me out was takeoff and landing. Because those are where things are high. You know that the cockpit's high activity, everything's going on. That was when I got stressed. Go arounds when they occasionally happened, very rarely. I can only remember a couple of times, but when they do, it's because of something that you've noticed that's very bad that's happening when they push those engines in. Yeah, I'm sure I've probably told this story when you're looking out the side and you can see the ground rapidly coming towards you sideways. You're like in high winds trying to land close to the ground, and then suddenly they're in what seems like a sideways stall to you when you're looking at the ground through your window, and then you hear the engines, spooling up to maximum or beyond maximum, and whatever they call it, 110%. Go around speed, takeoff and landing speed, whatever, full power. And for ages, the same thing's happening. Nothing. In other words, nothing happens. Yeah, you can hear the engines getting faster, but you're still seeing the ground hurtling towards you. In other words, it's not like on a car where you press the accelerator and then something happens, right? You go a bit quicker. That's it to happen in a plane. Seconds tick by, and and everyone on the plane's screaming because they're all terrified they're going to crash into the ground. Then the engines kick in.
Nathan, you got to see this movie called A Wing and a Prayer. Dennis Quaid's in it. It's based off a true story, and it's something similar to that, where the guy, he took a couple of flying lessons, but that was it. He was terrible at landing. His brother couldn't show him how the proper way to land was, so that was it, right? Now he's on a plane flying back from somewhere, and the pilot dies. And he's got his wife and his family with him. It's an intense movie, I'll tell you that.
I'm sure
he survived, obviously, because they made a movie about it. But it's a good flick, and you got to see. They filmed it really cool because when he's trying to land, it's exactly what you just said. It's like, holy shoot, is that what it really looks like? I mean, they're going so freaking fast, and he couldn't make the first landing. He had to go back up and come around. I was like, wow, that's insane. And it was one of them Cessnas, not like those, propeller private planes. It was like a freaking jet. But he didn't have any lessons in that.
Gotcha.
Intense movie.
Oh, I've got a whole bunch of people in Discord now.
Yeah, you got a bunch of people that probably tried to get on a link that you sent me.
Maybe. Get into covering a couple of videos. Should we do the live stream? Should we cover these videos on the live stream?
Yeah, leave the after show the pre-show for just chillaxing or something.
Okay.
Yeah, it seems like Mighty Mush gave you a bunch of snippets on Skype. So
yeah, I've queued them all up.
No, those are the ones.
Yeah, but those are good snippets, man. That gets you warmed up, I think.
Okay.
Obviously, we
Right,
all need
so
warming up.
who's piping up in Discord? Dank, I'm off mute. Dank, did you want to say something?
No, I can go on mute.
Okay, that was really low, but you said,
Everybody.
oh, we didn't quite make that out. Your volume is really low and muffledy. I
He
see
doesn't want to speak.
AI. Is that what he said? Okay. Well, Dank usually doesn't speak. He usually just listens. He lurks.
Hey, what's up with Georgie coming in constantly? Not Georgie. Who's the guy that Johnny keep coming in with this ether nonsense? What's going on with him?
I don't know. He got backed up by Eddie Bear yesterday, didn't he?
I don't know.
That's telling in itself.
What's telling?
People generally don't like
Yeah.
the ether talks, even on our Discord server.
Yeah, but some people just brace against whatever we're bracing against, if you know what I mean. They brace against us as we brace against it.
Well, yesterday with two guys that don't speak English that well going at it, I lost everything. I couldn't understand the word any of them was saying.
When it comes
Wait
to
a minute,
Johnny,
Neil. Neil, you speak English?
Don't be a wise guy.
Johnny
And
usually
that's the
doesn't
other
talk
thing.
about
What's
ether
going
when
on
I'm
with
around.
what was that AI?
Yeah.
What's going on with you and John? Are you both like super intelligent that you just can't get along with each other? He says green, you say blue.
What? Neil, he
You-
presents a lot of arguments as if they're logical, correct? From his point of view with assertion, correct? Yeah. And so what do? I rebut him, right? There you go.
There's a certain degree of refinement that goes on, and it's often done through clashes in argument that come across as clashes in personality, which they aren't necessarily the case that they're, just, are you just two guys that are smart and therefore you've got to disagree with each other? No. When people, that's one of the, I would hope that's one of the reasons that John and AI both like being here. Because you can go, at surface level, that seems really smart. But it ain't, and I'm going to tell you why. People like that. John gets a lot out of that as well, doesn't he? But he's generally talking to globe believers. But,
No, I think he pokes AI a little bit because he said to me, I don't know what it is with him.
Yeah.
Everything I say, but it seems like he pokes him a little bit.
That's what people do. In professional fields, people often get each other's backs up, and that will entice better work out of them. So, I don't know why. You're approaching this like it's a problem, which it isn't necessarily a problem. I mean, sometimes they get a bit personal with each other, but that's just the way people are. That's nothing to do with them and a clash of personalities necessarily. But that's how you're inferring that this is a problem, and is it just you guys as how you guys is? You know what I mean? That's how you're kind of suggesting it.
Not at all. I like when they go at it. You get a lot out of it. I agree.
Right. All that matters, isn't it?
It's all that matters. I like both of the guys. I think they're both extremely smart, and they bring a lot of good points to the table. So I wouldn't want them to fall out. Is what maybe I am saying it in a negative way because people are falling out left and right lately.
Dude, think about it this way. How can we fall out? We're not friends.
Yeah, they're internet acquaintances. Well, I was going to think of a less blunt way of putting that, but I think I'd have probably done a worse job by saying, "Oh well, who cares?" They're not, they're not trying to appeal to each other, sat across each other from the bar, making, social small talk with each other. That's not the purpose of their interactions, is it? Nor is it what they're trying to get out of their interactions either. Neither of them are angling to make the other one agree for the reasons of friendship. Do you know what I mean? There's a very different ends that each are seeking when they enter into those discussions, and it can get a bit snippy. Most of the time it's through, and I will blame it on, internet connections, because people take a pause for thought. You hear that and know that's normally your gateway in to make the next point, even if it's only a fraction of a second. And then the next thing is people talking over each other and assuming it's the other dickhead with this stupid argument doing it because he wants to disagree for no good reason, and then it becomes a bit bullshit. But, if you can kind of let that peter out of its own volition without any interference from you or I, more importantly, it will find its own natural course. And the points then tend to get pondered till the next show, and refinement happens, iron sharpens iron, so to speak.
For example,
so what do you got for us today, AI?
For example, what? AI?
The only person who made it into something personal was Neil, not me, nor John.
What can I say? I'm a personal guy.
Yeah, and sometimes I have to bring people who are a bit more like that down to earth when it comes specifically to the show. Don't get me wrong, there are certain relationships that I develop with people outside of the show, but when it comes specifically to the show, and I have to say this to you quite frequently, Neil, there's no obligation. Now that is quite cold. It's like almost saying, I don't care if you come or don't. But while that might seem cold, that is actually what I'm saying, because there is no obligation on either part, Discord or G+. There's been times, as you well know, that I've started the show with nobody. And back in the day when I first started doing the show, there'd be endless minutes of dead air because nobody had joined at all. There was no Discord server for people to be hanging around in when they know roughly what time the live stream starts.
Yes, my friend. So check it out. Why do I get so pissed off, Neil? It's because of complacency, right? If nobody critiques each other, then you just get in this routine where your shit smells like roses. Oh, yeah. Sorry, I'm not supposed to swear.
Mild enough and far enough into the recording. Yeah, exactly. So there's
but you see what I'm saying, right? It's like, go ahead.
Well, I was going to give you an example and say that I will still maintain my position, which is to say that Earth is measured flat, as a concise summary of a more expansive understanding to that statement based on people's critique of that statement and why it's not valid. So I can take those into consideration, and if someone critiques it from one of those angles, I'm reasonably well armed to deal with whatever the angle they take. But I can only thank the people who've critiqued us in that regard. Now, in many ways, some of those people come across as adversarial, is that the right word? And they may not be, in terms of their end result of what they achieve by refining what we say or giving us a better understanding. So where someone says, no, that statement doesn't make sense, specifically, Earth is measured flat, here's why, I can go, yeah, I do take that into consideration when you're talking about referencing things that are already known to be flat, or whatever the example they give. But that only comes with, not as you put it, knowing that your toilet bowl smells of roses, but knowing that, there are always going to be various angles that people can take in terms of the Socratic method to take apart your statement. Now, if at the end of that process you go, no, my statement's still sound, and I will defend it if someone critiques it on that basis, but my statement's sound, and I know it is because it's been heavily critiqued.
All right, and when you're getting critiqued on something, let's say it could be anything, let's say this measured flat stuff, do you process it right there and then, or more often than not, you process it after the show is done?
Me, I process it there and then. I'm lazy. I don't want to go away and do homework. I don't want to think about it afterwards.
No, but I mean, like,
I will drag out. Let's put it this way:
homework.
I will drag out an entire Ballbusters show to understand a concept that I don't get. So yeah, I'll try and figure it out there and then. And if I don't, on Ballbusters, I was paraphrasing back Brian's measuring the tangent plane with respect to your tangent point at your feet when dealing with a refracted horizon that they legitimize through dip correction. giving you points on the ground? No, because they're on the tangent plane. Well, the latitude points need to be on the ground with respect to the ground on that line that you measure if you're going to claim that that's the ground. Now, for them, they've taken their refracted tangent point horizon up when they've got a sextant in their hand, and they say, yeah, it's a refracted horizon, and we correct for that fact when we draw out this tangent plane to our feet. But it's no longer the ground for latitude points. Now, as that was being drilled into me over a several-hour period on Ballbusters, this is the point I'm trying to illustrate to Righteous. While I didn't get the point, I paraphrased back the incorrect points to Brian and Adam, who would go in the nicest possible way. We'll, you haven't quite got it, but we'll take you by the hand later, and in a way, in the nicest possible way, saying you haven't got it yet. You don't understand this. But yeah, I'd rather, even if it's public, if it means I don't have to do homework, then I'd rather just drag it out until I do understand it.
Well,
yeah, Nathan's an on-the-fly guy.
I noticed a lot of times I get like a lot of realizations like later, sometimes much later. And now that I think about it, you for a second, you also, because remember there's some things that you said, oh, I didn't get when you guys originally talked about this, but now I get what Brian is saying or Arwen is saying or has said for a long time.
Yeah, well, that would be an example of it. We're incorporated into that understanding that Brian has not been privy to, he's only just joined, but he has just joined. Hello, Brian. No need for a reply. In that discussion, I've often said, yeah, now I understand the importance of why you got angry with me when dip correction wasn't being understood. Now, while dip correction isn't the be-all and end-all of his point with regards to angles to Polaris being on the ground, which they're not for a refracted ball-believing tangent point at your feet horizon that's being justified by dip correction. Now, that isn't me fully understanding the overall ramifications of that little section of that, nicely summarised by me now, because I do understand it, point. But I would have still said to him at the time when he's explaining, this is Brian, I'm sorry to speak in the third person about you now, you're here, Brian, explaining the significance of dip correction. I'd have said, up until now I didn't get it, now I do get it. Now in the back of, obviously, Brian's mind, even though he can confirm this or deny this after the fact, he's probably thinking, no, you still don't understand the wider reaching ramifications of dip correction because it's only one small part of where they justify their overall tangent plane starting at their feet, the only point connected to the ball that isn't the ground when you're measuring angles to Polaris that have got to be on the ground to be latitude. It don't match no more, it doesn't work no more for their argument, it leaves them in stunned silence. Now I cannot have those discussions with Brian because I actually understand it now in its totality, as a whole argument, rather than just one aspect, one dip correction aspect, which for them is being blagged into their lifting up a horizon to points that are no longer the ground, the overall point. That until Ballbusters recently, I can now disclaim, I didn't fully understand the overall point and the significance therein. Even if I did at that moment, I've gone, I understand now, I see how important it is to understand how dip correction works. No, all I've learned is how dip correction works at that particular moment for Brian. Probably very frustrating. Anyway, now bring you into the conversation as I've been talking to you in the third person, Brian. Hello.
Hey, Nathan. Hey, Righteous, Neil, everyone. No, dip correction, and although it's part of the whole Polaris angles thing, dip correction is slightly separate. Not obviously it's going to be part of that, but it's separate in itself. As in, if you're doing dip correction and your height of eye is 20 foot above the water underneath your boat, then that means your height of eye can only be 20 foot above the water that's at the horizon. And the horizon could be 15, 20 miles away. That means there's 20 miles of horizontal water. That can't happen on the globe. So what they're calling, like they can make all the claims they want about a refracted horizon nonsense that's based on an unmeasured radius value that can never be measured because of the refraction they're claiming. It's all nonsense. The point being is that you can't have 20 miles, 15 miles, 5 miles, 1 mile, any amount of horizontal water. And that's what the dip correction proves, that you're referencing the Earth when you're measuring it on port, and that first measurement is used to correct your second measurement at sea. That means you're referencing the Earth twice. You're referencing the Earth twice, and you're proving the water between underneath the boat and the horizon is horizontal. There's no way around it for them. The Polaris argument, you are using dip correction there, But the best part about dip correction there is there's no special dip correction. The point being is that if you were having to reference the globe's geometric edge or any part of the globe's surface to get your correct latitude north of the equator with a marine sextant via Polaris and the horizon, then there'd have to be a special dip correction because what you're referencing would be lower than surface level. You wouldn't just be able to use your height of eye. You would have to have more than that to correct. But there isn't any more than that. It's exactly the same as everything else because you're not referencing a globe's geometric edge. You're just referencing the visible sea horizon. You're referencing the water that's whatever amount of miles away from you. So you're getting your correct latitude from that. What they're calling globes 7 over and greater than 7 over 6 hour horizon, you're getting your correct latitude off that. They can't have that because the latitude is, it brings them back to their origins. Where do they get their globe from? The back engineering of flat Earth elevation angles to Polaris. It's just a mathematical back engineering. So if you're referencing what they think is a refracted horizon and getting your correct latitude, then the Earth's not a globe and it's flat. It's that simple, proven. There's no way around it. Can't be argued. They can't do it. There's no way out of it. You're not referencing the globe. End of story. Hey, how are things?
Good morning, everyone.
Good morning. Good to have you all. Welcome, welcome, welcome. We left a couple of housekeeping questions out from yesterday, and we did do the majority of them to keep our hand in, as the saying goes. So I'm going to do a couple that we didn't do. So, any evidence of a self-perpetuating molten iron core at the centre of a presupposed spherical Earth?
No, because that would require a dynamo on the bike to work opposite from what they say, because they're claiming a reverse dynamo. Actually, that's more of a debunk of it. So, there's no evidence of it, sorry.
I never got that bit, reverse dynamo. I remember Anthony Riley saying that, right? And I boiled it down to self-perpetuating. But when you say reverse dynamo, dynamo is the perpetuating bit, and the fact that it's self-perpetuating to put itself beyond the restraints of the Curie point, it gets a bit complex, doesn't it? But what do you mean by reverse dynamo? How does that fit in?
You remember the dynamos that used to be on bikes? Younger people may not remember these, but we used to have dynamos on a bike. And the whole point of the dynamo was that it had a magnetic field within it. And when you pushed the wheel next to the wheel of your bike and the wheel of your bike moved, that created the magnetic field created an electric current, and that moved the electric current, and that lit up the light on the bike. So that's magnetism creating an electric field. Then you're moving the electric field, which does create another magnetic field. But the point is that it then powers the bike, well, because you're moving the electric charge that's created by the magnetic field. But what they're claiming is a magnetic field that's created by an electric charge. But that's not how it works. The only place I know of in history where, now I'm an electrician, John refracted would know a lot better, but I have never heard of electricity just being there and creating a magnetic field, just sitting there. Do you know what I mean? They're claiming, I don't even think they're even claiming a moving magnetic field or electric field, which would create a magnetic field. But they're starting off with the electric. You have to start with the magnetic, not the electric, to create the electric. So they're starting with electric, Whereas in reality, we start with magnetic. If you understand what I mean.
I understand what your explanation means.
Sense.
It's just reverse dynamo doesn't make sense beyond the fact that it's kind of giving it a title that infers a bit of, it's just generating of current by anything. That's how all electricity is basically made, isn't it? But the fact that you're generating it with a bike and you say reverse dynamo, it just means that you've got a lead in to explain what you've just explained in terms of their half-assed explanation that already starts with a magnetic field. Because what can we lean on in that regard? Well, what have we actually got? Well, we do have a field that we can show. We use it with our compasses and prove flat Earth with it all the time. But beyond that, that's the only basis to start that la land journey. So that's the only thing they start with, isn't it?
Well, no, they don't start with a magnetic field. They start with electricity. Right? Now, where we garner electricity from in the real world, if you want to create an electric charge, you need a magnetic field in the real world. But they're starting with an electric charge that creates a magnetic field. Now, you can create a magnetic field with a moving electric charge, but you need a magnetic field in the first place. That would be electromagnetism. But you need a magnetic field in the first place to create the electric charge. They're just starting with electric charge.
But I do like the story of Thea, though. I know it's just a story, but it has essentially become part of the heliocentric, timeline, because there's no other way of. I want to say no other. There is lots of others, but that's the way they've decided is the best way to explain why the molten iron core is as big as it is and hasn't cooled down over the time period that they must enforce with their heliocentric worldview and, Big Bang theories based on distances derived from flat plane measurements. All of that has a certain timeline that they have to fit within. And the core doesn't. It should have cooled down a long time ago. And you end up with this necessity of Thea smashing into Earth and depositing its core, the remnants of which is a quite handy load of old garbage that's left in orbit around that blob of, I don't know, Cadbury's cream egg, and becomes the moon, the debris that is, but conveniently giving us a much bigger molten iron core, right? Well, that, like I say, is just quite a nice, fantastical story to talk about when you come to the molten iron core in its story. But from my own impressions, the backstory you've given it, which I'm sure is accurate and a good debunking, don't they just call it the magnetic core in that regard? Isn't it just always just been ascribed to being the reason we've got the fields that we can follow on a flat Earth with a compass?
Well, anything. See, the thing about it is when you're talking about Thea, right, you're actually got. That's like talking about our curve after you've ignored there is no radius. Do you know what I mean? Let's talk about our curve and the our curve calculator. Yet no one has produced a radius measurement. It's because you're looking past that they are claiming there's an electric charge that then starts moving and creates an electric field. But in reality, we need a magnetic field to first create the electric charge. It starts with a magnetic field. You know what I mean? You need a magnetic field to create an electric charge, and a moving electric charge creates an electromagnetic field. But to have the electric charge in the first place, you need a magnetic field. They're just starting with electric charge. Do you know what I mean? It's like, that doesn't work. It's like gas pressure without a container. It's like completely opposite of, it's like they're trolling you. That's the best way. It's like they're trolling electrical engineers or something.
Maybe.
You know what I mean? Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, if it's one of those things that would be glaring to someone with a mild... talking of being glaring, I got a flat Earth debunking into one of my actual subscription feeds, which I never like when that happens. It's normally a quick fire way of getting unsubscribed from if it's me that's being fed it, right? Because it's going to be in the negative 99 times out of 100. Well, 99 times out of 100 means there must be one time in 100 that someone does a flat Earth response video where they're not on your side, therefore it's automatically going to be positive, or there's going to be ambiguity at best that you're going to critique. They're definitely a glober, but they're critiquing flat Earth, and they're not that 99 times out of 100. They resort to ad homs and all that sort of stuff. Well, I got one of those in my subscriptions feed from a guy who makes videos about hi-fi. There's not very many times that I've managed to link a subject that maybe twice I've managed to link flat Earth to hi-fi. Yeah, whereas this guy managed it and did a flat Earth response of why the Earth isn't flat when he assumes are. Yeah. So out of the video, the only response I would have is to point out that where he's assuming R, it's actually measured off a flat Earth with either the Alberuni example or the minimum elevation angle to Polaris, right? That's all I really need to do when all of the maths he did was based on the presupposition of an R value that he hasn't had measured by any other means than a flat Earth. So I took that, but sort of brushed over the fact that he had done some quite complex dancing with maths that I didn't pay enough attention to because it didn't intrigue me enough to pay attention beyond the assumption of the R value. In other words, I lost interest quickly, right? But with that in mind, I passed it on to Adam, and I'm like, have a look at this. This may be more appealing to you than me because he's dealing with, you know, complex conversion maths into oblate spheroids using R. Have a look and tell me what you think. And his response, Adam's response, was, well, so biggie it's flatty. Is that all he's really doing? I'm like, well, yeah. But, you know, my comments were all in regards to your assumptions of R, which is where I tend to take these things. But I'm hoping we can cover that because it more than the content or his crappy argument with an assumption of R, which isn't going to be the focus, just the way he approached the subject was, I don't want to say breathtaking, but certainly a breath of fresh air. In terms of he being that 1 in 100 that doesn't approach it from, you're just all thick, scientists have already figured this out for us, let me regurgitate some of it for you. He didn't quite do that. You know, the only place he put a foot wrong was in the presuppositional R value that almost everybody who's got a predisposition to being on a sphere wouldn't spot, because why wouldn't you automatically assume we're measuring with sphere values? We're on a sphere. So again, without faulting him for that part of everything begging the question of R values, it was an exceptionally good attempt, and I want to go through it when we've got Adam's full attention, just so that there's not things that I miss in the maths because it's perhaps above my grade. I'll even say it's above my pay grade before we get to it. Like I say, because of at the point I lost interest. It may not be, but you know what I'm saying. Adam's going to be better served to critique someone that's doing more complex maths, and me just watching a 6-minute video and then going, look, he assumes R. Go on, whoever that is.
You underestimate yourself. That bothers me a lot. Why you gotta wait for Adam?
What do you mean?
Well, Adam is better than me and Nathan at maths, so
yeah, that's it.
That'd be the reason. So is Mitchell. Mitchell is excellent at maths.
Oh, I didn't hear the math. I'm sorry. I'm driving. I didn't hear that part. It's about mathematics. Okay. Gotcha.
Oh, well, now I'm offended.
Well, the thing about it is what this guy, I saw that video, you posted it, I watched it. He comes across as an intelligent guy who just is under the impression that there is an R value measurement. Kind of like refracted curvature. He doesn't realize there isn't.
Oh, did you watch
it? That's the thing about the world. I did, yeah. He's obviously intelligent. You know what I mean? He obviously knows what he's talking about, especially when it comes to sound and that. Like, but it's like a lot of people in the world, there's plenty of intelligent people in the world, but they've been given the impression that there is a measurement of the R value and a measurement of R curve, and you know what I mean? Everyone knows it's a globe. It's like, no, they don't. Everyone pre-assumes it's a globe because they were told, they were given the impression that it was a globe. They don't realize that they're pre-assuming this measurement. You know, like refractive. When refractive found out there was no measurement, he said himself he got a sick stomach. He knew it's over. You know what I mean? So maybe he's one of those guys like refractive. Or he might turn into a funny, you wouldn't know, anti-flat earther.
I really like that guy because of his approach to hi-fi. I know we're on a live show and this should be still in housekeeping, maybe on Multiplying Cause or something. But the reason I like him is because he's a pro audio guy who likes hi-fi. So he's got in his front room the same brand of speakers that I've got. He's got B&W, just a slightly bigger pair than I've got. Nicer. But anyway, the point is that he's obviously into audiophile stuff, but knows where all the snake oil is. Now, but for the fact that I run a show, I would have never entered into that particular arena either. Now, I even trained in that arena, but as soon as you leave an arena, things move on really quickly. 20 years later, I haven't got a clue about pro audio. But then you start buying mic preamps and XLR mics and things of that nature, and suddenly your feed in YouTube is full of all the pro audio stuff, where they show you what is actually snake oil that you didn't realise because you don't know what you don't know, in terms of what's snake oil in hi-fi. Now, that particular guy, because he's a bit more empathetic to your average audiophile, he doesn't sugarcoat the this is snake oil approach. He does just tell you, but he doesn't do it in a way that, in the same way I'm praising him for not being the 99 out of 100 when it comes to responses to Flat Earth, he takes that sort of approach when he's appealing to audiophiles to say, maybe you don't necessarily want to spend £1,000 on this bit of wire. You know what I mean? He's one of those. He's a good guy.
He's saving people money and trouble.
Yeah. Very good. I like that guy. So I'm glad that when I saw him do my heart sank when I saw him do a Flat Earth video, because there's so many YouTubers I've unsubscribed from that I really did like, because they've become a dick when it comes to Flat Earth. They've a Flat Earth subject. They've immediately reverted to ad homs, personal attacks, stereotyping fallacies, baseless assertions, claiming proof that has no evidence for their assertion in terms of sphere, rebuttals that don't address any of the actual arguments that we as what we would consider cutting-edge Flat Earthers put forth. You know, nothing but an address to the feast of nonsense, and wrapped up in some mocking tone. You're like, okay, that's your true colours coming out when something that you believe in is challenged, Flat Earth in this instance versus Globe Earth in their belief. You see someone's true colours. And in this case, to see that guy being absolutely consistent with how he approaches things, getting it wrong because he's assumed and I went, you know, as I told him in his comments, and I spent about an hour in his comments responding to his other viewers. Terrible, really. But I'm quite looking forward to covering that, like I say, with Adam. So, yeah.
Yeah, that would be good when Adam is there, because no point without Adam or Mitchell, someone who can do the maths. Do you know what I mean?
Is Mitchell's
very good at maths. Mitchell's excellent at maths, yeah.
Are you sure?
He's corrected Adam in the past.
The Australian guy?
Mitchell is excellent at maths, yeah.
Really?
Very good. Yeah. He even corrected Adam on something he was wrong about.
Right, over the top. I'm trying to egg on the over at the top racism. I just couldn't quite get there without you know, definitely taking it that I automatically assume he's a dumb Australian. That was where I was taking that. You just didn't want to play along. I know he's good at maths. I know Mitchell very well.
I was like, I wonder what they meant by the Australian guy. It's like, yeah, Mitchell. I mean, the Australian guy, you know him.
Well, that was another joke I was trying to lead you on. The channel's called Mitchell from Australia. But that was another joke that I thought you'd play along with. You just didn't. It's all right. Don't worry.
I wasn't reading the room at all.
It's fine. It's fine.
There was a couple of videos I watched in the past few days. One of them was this rocket that went up claimed to be 65 miles. Right?
Yeah, watch that.
And I debunked it. Now, there was some nonsense in there, comments about, that's the end of Flat Earthers, all this nonsense. And it was total rubbish. The whole of the United States, I just used globe maps to debunk it. And there was a couple of people, but one particular person was very unhappy. He did his best to try and get around it. But they're not claiming that the United States has taken up the whole one side of a globe. I said they are. That's what they're trying to show, because they're frauds. They had the whole of the United States taken up, and not even the whole of the United States, and taken up a whole one side of the globe. Do you know what I mean? It was complete and utter rubbish. It was obvious fraud. Do you know what I mean? And I just used some globe maps to debunk it. And this guy was unhappy to the max. And there was other people there, Flat Earthers, who liked it. But there's another video I watched earlier today, and it's similar. It's this high altitude video. Not a rocket, but a balloon.
Thanks for all these videos. I've actually been watching them.
Oh, right, yeah. But what was good about this one today, it only came out 10 months ago. It was a balloon. It was like 30-something kilometers, 38 kilometers or 39 kilometers. Whatever that is in miles, probably 27 miles or something. Very high. But it was really well done. But what was good was you look into the comments, and the amount of Flat Earthers in there, it's just like, no rotation. You know what I mean? The curve is only the lens, all this stuff. And it was like every comment had some Flat Earther in there laughing. Do you know what I mean? So, I mean,
yeah, I noticed
badly.
that. I went into I go into the comment section of that particular video, the second one, the one that was a guy that had launched up a 360 camera. The reason it was a good video, as far as I could tell, because I was like, what's going on here? Because as you rotate your picture around, you can see like below, and I know how a 360 camera works, but I was like, why is it so stable? And then if you look carefully, what you can see is there's like a digital line that scrolls around as the camera's actually spinning. So what it's doing is it's interpreting where the data's supposed to be and rotating the image as the whatever it is, gimbal or wherever the camera's placed in, is also rotating about its own axis. And then it's really weird, because when you move the camera down, you can literally see the payload spinning around while you've got a stable view of the outside, because it's obviously a really clever 360 camera program that's allowing you to keep the image stable as the camera moves, right? So everything that you're looking at, but you just get this rotating, instead of a rotating image, you just get this, like I say, this digital line that every, I don't know, second or two just goes past and sweeps past the screen. So, but as you're looking around, even though it's slightly disorientating to see the payload spinning if you've got that in view, you get a really stable image of the world from that altitude. I was very, very impressed with that, just from a technological point of view, in terms of getting that sort of image stabilization, where I can just hold the camera straight, and if I get it in a certain position, I got it to mess up once as well, where it didn't seem to work, or it was on the film. I don't know which one it would be at a glance. But at one point, I got it so that it stopped that line going around, and suddenly the camera is actually spinning, and you're like, "Whoa, getting dizzy!" It's actually whirling around with the payload. You know what I mean? So in other words, if you move the camera down, the payload would be stationary. It was really bizarre, but clever stuff to make it look that clean. Would you not agree? It looked really clean.
Excellent. I was like, "Wow, this is really good. This is brilliant." Like, I didn't even realize when I moved my phone, I was going to be able to move the camera, move my camera view. And I started moving my phone, and by accident, I went, "Hang on a minute, what's going on here?" And I could move it around 360 degrees and see all around. It was excellent. I mean, hats off to them. I don't care if they're Globers. They did an excellent job.
Yeah, but back to the point you were making originally, sorry to hark on about how great their technology was, which it was. The comment section, as soon as I scrolled down, I was like, what? Why is this? There's loads of them. There's flat earther after flat earther after flat earther laughing their head off, pointing out that there's no drift. And given that I did, because I happened to just stick it on, I didn't know what it was when I pressed the link that you shared. And I'm strolling around, and it's just air noises, and I'm glancing back going, "Oh, okay, this is what it is." And then I had a look around on the 360 view. I was familiar with it. Obviously, you weren't. But yeah, as I was looking at it, I was like, "Okay, this is just really, really quality footage. Let's have a look at the comments. What's everyone else saying?" And it did occur to me, yeah, it's when you can see that it's so stable, you can see that you're not moving along a lick as the ground turns underneath you. You know what I mean? The ground's complete. There's going to be the same place, and then he collects it at the end from the exact.
And he gives the timeline.
Yeah, he collects it. So in other words, it's gone up, and then come back down in the exact same spot, and he's just picked it up and walked off with it.
Yeah, and even if he didn't collect it exactly where he left it off from, he knew where it was because it has probably GPS on it, and I know if I did the maths, there would be nothing in globe related that could be attached to it, because the thing about it is that you get a timeline at what altitude it was at what time in the video. Do you know what I mean? And at what time it was that by the time it got to that altitude. So, I mean, you're getting timestamps of actual time. I think it was a 3-hour video. So 3 hours, the thing was up. Maybe not 3 hours, it was up at the total highest altitude, but it was at the, I'm Belgian, at the highest altitude for a good while, probably about 27 miles, which is quite high, and no movement. It was brilliant. It's just like no movement. High def globe debunk, you know.
Yeah, it's really good. Both those videos. Yeah, you've been sharing some good stuff, Brian. Hello, Chocolate.
Thank you.
Morning, guys.
Chocolate.
Okay, well, we got one housekeeping question. We'll save gas pressure for tomorrow. In the meantime, we've got a few clips that have been shared by Vlad. Now, I don't know if they've come out of the clip section, but we'll play them as is. I think they're only relatively short. Are you around? Is he in the live stream chat?
Yes, sir.
Oh, is it
What's
you,
up,
Mush?
Nathan? Yes.
Okay. Just if you can pipe up, because for some reason it's where you trimmed them out as nice clips. I've got them, but they've gone into the actual video itself, which is handy because it means I can tell you to go and like.
So what do we want to do?
Tell me when the clip or the natural end that you wanted us to cover comes to an end. If you don't say anything, I will just end up playing through the whole video because it has started at the right timestamp, but because it's gone to the video, it doesn't. It just carries on playing. So I just want you to pipe up and say that's enough for that, and then I'll move on to the next clip, which I have got timestamped. So the first one starts at 28 seconds, then the second one starts at 1 minute 28 seconds, and then the third one starts
So in
at
other words,
3 minute 45.
Okay. In other words, just to let you know when it ends.
Yeah.
All right,
So if it's only like 20 seconds, just say, "Oh, that'll do."
All right. Yep.
Okay. So as I've just done, I've put his link in the live stream chat. So this videographer is called. It's just right mess on my screen. Is called Michael Sartain. Am I saying that correctly?
Yeah, that's the guy. No, you know your man that QE did a few treatments on recently. You know that guy who does all the bad logical fallacies. The guy with the problem with you, Nathan.
This guy's
Remember
got a
that
problem
guy?
with. Hold on a second. This guy's got a problem
not
with
this
me.
guy. No, I'm sure this guy does have, but this other guy who's a flat earther, who I can't remember his name now. His other names are escaping me, but QE was doing a treatment on him there recently before the Bob, the science guy, and Peterson one. He was doing it, and this guy is a flat earther and he's got a problem with you, but this guy constantly attacks this Michael Sartain guy, saying that this guy is as thick as your man Josh. He was on the debate with you. So this Sartain guy is.
I'm still a bit confused. Who's got a problem with me?
This guy. What's the guy's name?
Not this guy. Stop. Because
logical fallacies.
Is this guy Michael Sartain, the guy whose link I'm sharing? Does this guy specifically have an issue with me?
Not that I'm aware of.
Okay, fine.
But that's not the guy.
That's what I was asking. That's what I was asking
about.
That's all I was asking.
I don't think he mentioned your name. No.
No, fine. I was going to say the guy looks like he could absolutely. It's a bit like when you deal with Joe Rogan. Like if I meet him face to face, I'd be like, "No hard feelings. Please don't kill me." You know what I mean? He looks like he'd definitely kick my ass.
Yeah, but that doesn't mean he's right. He needs to be told when he's wrong.
Oh, no, that's not what I'm saying.
Like.
I'm just
looks don't mean anything.
Most of the time, like, I'm just saying, with Dell, right? Dell was like, you wouldn't be saying that face to face. Yeah, I would, Dell. Yeah, I definitely would. However, when it's someone like this or Joe Rogan, who could probably kill you, you do take a slightly different attitude to a certain extent. I mean, this guy might not be super fit. He just looks like he could kick my ass.
I don't know. Dell looks pretty intimidating to me, too.
Dell does? Really?
Yeah, that looks like he could be pretty dangerous. He looks pretty strong now and aggressive.
Yeah, it looks like a dangerous individual, Dell. I wouldn't want to mess with him.
Shout out to Michael Jones. He just says, mind shock. Super chat.
That's it. Mind shock. Thank you, Michael Jones. Mind shock. That's the guy. Mind shock has a big problem with you, but mind shock kept on taking the piss out of this Michael Sartain guy while he was doing his treatment of your debate with your man Josh and the other guy. Dennis, whatever his name is, when you were with Patrick Connells. This guy, he kept bringing up this Michael Sartain guy, pointing out that this guy is really stupid. So, let's see.
I see. So, you're saying, just so I'm finally clear, Mindshock made reference to this guy as being the dumb equivalent of the Josh guy when he was critiquing that video, correct?
Yeah.
Gotcha.
Yeah,
right.
He said he didn't know which one of the two were stupid.
Oh, I see. Well, let's see. So let us know when I need to end mush.
So first one is 47 seconds.
Okay, perfect.
Guys who I went on with, it was fine. I did 20 hours of study before that episode because I wanted to
really proving this Earth is a circle.
Well, no, it wasn't that. I wanted to quote every one of their bullshit arguments before they quoted them to me, and have a counter for all of them because I can't.
That sounds very reasonable. Okay. That sounds good.
Right now, I know flat Earth arguments better than most. Not all.
Right.
I'm not better than like Jaron and.
I don't know this guy. Is that true?
No, I'd say it's just nobody's talking about him. I know he doesn't have a clue about what he's talking about.
He knows feast of nonsense better. That's what he's talking about because he just mentioned Jaron.
No, he said he doesn't even know better than Jaron. I can guarantee you this guy has not a clue what he's talking about.
I'm sorry, but just being able to quote an argument doesn't mean you understand the argument.
Yeah,
okay.
And I can guarantee you he doesn't understand his own paradigm, the one he's supposed to be supporting. Don't worry about it. He's going to be a train wreck.
And Flat Earth Dave, But most flat earthers cannot quote flat earth dogma better than I can. The whole 8 inches per square mile or some bullshit like that. Like,
oh, God.
I don't know.
Let me get it straight.
You can't buy irony like that. You just can't even buy it.
I can quote flat earth arguments really well. That whole 8 inches per mile squared claim the globe makes. What? That's not a flat earth argument. What are you talking about? You mean you vaguely have a rendition of the rebuttals that flat earthers put to the globe claims that you don't know very well? Clearly.
the whole thing. The sun is 3,950 feet above, or 3,950 miles above the Earth. Like things like that that are provably untrue. Because what does that mean? That means that light travels at 4,000 miles a second.
Before we go down the flat hole rabbit hole,
What is he on about?
What's he on about? Yeah, exactly. Was there more to that? Mush.
Yeah, I think that was it. Yeah.
Next clip.
20 hours of study. Yep.
Okay.
Can I just say something on that? It's like he knows a load of straw man nonsense that no one actually claims, and he doesn't know his own globe. He thinks that, as he put it, the 8 inches squared per mile is that's your claim, buddy. You don't even know it. He's horrendous.
Hold on, though. Is this guy, based on what you've said about Mindshock's opinion of him, is he just low-hanging fruit? Although he's directly addressing us, so fair game.
This whole flat Earth movement started in 2015. If you look at like the
did it? What about me? I was here before that. Math Powerland was here long before that. There was a resurgence of it pre 2010. So that dated back to like 2006 and prior, with people like Charles Flat Earth Math, who was arguing the toss about it before any of us even knew the subject existed. But yeah, according to you, it started, what, a year after I got here? Although I did get here quite late 2014, to be fair.
The occurrences of flat Earth on the internet.
Go on, Chocolate.
No, I'm just saying, what about Simon Robotham, Lady Jane, all these people. Then there's Samuel Shenton back in the 50s into the 70s, then Charles K. Johnson from the 70s right through to the early 2000s. I mean, Charles K. Johnson was on, did it like something like 3,000 interviews or something, and he was on adverts and all kinds of stuff. I mean, this didn't start in 2015, Bozo.
He goes in 2015, he goes, pew, it just shoots straight up like a hockey stick. And the reason why, and I know this is the reason, and I can't prove it, but
I know this is the reason. I can't prove it, but I know it's the reason. That is not a good way to start a claim. Really. It really isn't.
You can speculate, but this is what happened.
You don't know, you can't prove it. You do know. Let's speculate together.
Chinese and Russian agents started creating Facebook groups in the United States.
Oh my God.
What?
Really? What about it just being flat? What about that? It's measured that way. What more do you want? No, it was Russian Facebook agents.
In order to find, because they know we're technologically illiterate society, and they did so in order to sow chaos in the U.S.
My God. So what is it that you can't manage to set your alarm clock and use your iPhone properly and download apps, so therefore we are a technologically inferior race? What? I don't think so. Maybe you're just a bit dumb with technology.
A Russian psyop.
Conspiracy
That's what he's trying to say, isn't it?
Hold on, Brian. Say again, Goat.
He's a conspiracy theorist.
Sounds like it. He loves it. I hate it when they project that onto me. I don't mind if you want to take that on your own shoulders. Fine, I'll just laugh at you. But when, like in the AMA, that guy was like, well, then you'd be saying there's no nuclear war. No, I'm not saying that, but that's what you would concern yourself with, given the awful truth that the space that you think is above your head isn't real. It's not a sky vacuum. It's not somewhere you can travel through with rockets. But suddenly I'm saying rockets aren't real, according to them. At least in this instance, he's, with a lot of peppering and disclaimers, making it clear that this is just his opinion. Right? But it's true, because here's what I think.
But not only did
Nathan,
they do...
Yeah.
At Nathan, how do you explain flour on your flat Earth model? That was basically the question.
I saw that comment he made. Someone else said something like, you know, if I can't get milk out of this bull, why would buckets exist? Or something like that, which I thought was also quite funny.
Exactly.
That they have these things where they would have like a pro-Islam rally, and it would.
Was that the end of that clip?
This one is 58 seconds.
A bit. There's more to this one, or move on to the next?
Yeah, you can move on to the next. Yeah.
Physicists build models to predict the future.
Yes, you got one.
Okie dokie. What kind of models do they build? Supermodels? I think it's gonna rain tomorrow.
Know, because of physicists, when eclipses are going to happen. I know when we're going to get to the point where...
Is that predicting the future? This is so sad. So if I look at my clock, right, and I write down exactly what happened, I study it, and I get all the patterns down, and then at 11:59 I go, everyone listen, pay attention. You're all listening. Everyone? Right. In 1 minute, that hand is going to hit the 12. I can predict the future.
Mind shock wasn't wrong, I tell you.
Yeah, it's good for a laugh, though, isn't he? This is a good laugh.
Yeah. I mean, a physicist is the one who makes it possible to predict eclipses. Like, no one predicts them. They're part of a cycle. They're around since the Babylonian times, and maybe before that. You know what I mean? He doesn't have no concept of history or no correct information in any way. It's like as if he's trolling.
I don't know.
Well, it makes sense why Mindshot goes after him now.
Well,
for the newbies, it's all about the buzzwords, right? It's all about sunsets, eclipses. What else? You know, all the buzzwords they got.
Flower.
Yeah. They don't need to understand these things. They just need to repeat them.
Yeah, it's all bull milk and buckets, isn't it?
Where Mars and Earth are in phase so that you can make the 6-month travel there and then back at a certain amount of time, which happens like every, don't quote me on this, 2 years. Like 2 years.
What? You can make the 6-month travel there and back to Mars. What? What is he jabbering about? What the hell is he on about? Oh my God. This is embarrassing. Is there any more to this?
2 years and 8 months.
The last one was
again.
39 seconds. It's a short one.
Yeah, I think we've had the most.
No, but the point at which they get back to the same point is like 2 years and 8 months or something like that. I could be wrong. Anyway, the point is, how do you model those things out? How do we know that the Earth, the sun goes through rotation every 11 years? Because we can model these things out. Physicists are good at modeling the reality.
Yeah. Okay. Jolly good. Okay. On a more serious note, so this was the extension of yesterday's video. I've already put a link to him. Please let Michael know at Nathan Oakley 1980 sent me with the link that's just gone by. But I'm going to share a different link now. So hence, I'm not going to immediately share his link straight after doing it. It has already gone by. Hopefully, some of you already left a comment on in that video saying at Nathan Oakley 1980 sent me. Here we go. So this is a different video. So I'm just going to get Brian to do a preamble in a minute, whoever that is. So in a second, Brian's going to give you a preamble of why we're covering this as a follow-on from yesterday's live stream. So we did cover a bit of Michael, I think it was Michael Sartain or whatever his name is, yesterday's after show. If you want to check that out, if you're a member. Oh, and I need to do a little promo. Can someone nudge me before we finish out this live stream? I need to do a little promo to the members about an up-and-coming thing that's happening tomorrow. Anyway, this video, go and let him know, or her know. I don't actually know who this is. At Nathan Oakley 1980 sent me. So this is following on from yesterday's garbage that Brian provided. Brian.
Yeah, I don't know who the videographer is, but it's Graham Handcock, that guy, archaeologist guy. He had some documentary on Netflix there in the past 12 months that was very popular. He's on Joe Rogan's. He's speaking about the Piri-Reis map. And yesterday's video was based on the Piri-Reis map. And the guy couldn't understand how this map could exist pre-1700s. Because according to the official story, it's impossible for it to exist pre-1700s, because it's impossible for anyone to know what the longitude lines were pre-1700s. Because and if you look into a lot of celestial navigation, a lot of stuff changed in the 1700s. They tried to change it more globe focused, right, in the 1700s. So there was a lot of stuff that wasn't happening prior to that in celestial navigation. So something was going on in the 1700s, and they gave people the impression that maps, like with the longitude lines on them and them kind of things, they couldn't exist anytime prior to the 1700s. But yet the Piri Reis map is, I think, 100 plus years before that. And there's other maps, other old maps that show the longitude lines. And the guy yesterday was making up a lot of nonsense as to how is it even possible for that map to exist? Maybe it must be aliens, anything, some time travelers, whatever he was coming up with. Whereas this is Graham Handcock talking about it in a little bit more of a measured way, but the outcome is actually not much different, or in some ways, so I leave it go.
In a world where we often think we have uncovered all the secrets of the past, a conversation between Joe Rogan and Graham Handcock on the Joe Rogan podcast reveals a fascinating story of ancient seafaring cultures. While archaeology acknowledges the Polynesian expansion as the first great seafaring adventure, Handcock questions the evidence and points to DNA evidence from the Amazon and ancient maps as proof of a global navigating culture in the Ice Age.
I mean, we can debunk that statement straight away, can't we? They're using angles to the stars to create these maps, which are flat. So to infer, as one guest did recently, that this is a spherical coordinate system? No, it definitely is not. With respect to a flat plane. Taking angles to the stars off a flat plane.
Yeah, it's not. The latitude and longitude grade is a pure flat two-dimensional flat grade map. Flat grade. It has nothing to do with a sphere. That's where they back engineer the sphere from. The proof of that is the actual angles to Polaris with a marine sextant, where you won't be using a globe's geometric edge to get your correct latitude. You just be using the visible sea horizon. They think the longitude lines couldn't exist prior to 1700s. Yet Kepler had to know about the longitude lines to come up with his analemma to back engineer the original sun cycle into the Copernican model. He needed the longitude lines. So some of their own top boys debunk their own claims often.
The discovery of an old map that shows the world as it looked during the last ice age, incorporating precise relative latitudes and longitudes, is hard to explain. What could this mean?
It means they knew how to measure angles to Polaris. That's it. That's all it means. Unless I'm not giving it its dues, Brian. Up until now...
No, that's all.
Just to preface this, even when I first went and looked at this, which was the very, very first thing I covered with Martin Liedtke, who's now gone to the dark side of mud floods and such like, Antiquitech, etc., etc. But he and I looked into maps. Now, before Flat Earth, Mappy Martin, as he was known, had loads of them. He was really keen on maps. So he recognised the Flat Earth proof within maps pretty quickly. And then we started looking at really old maps, like the Map of Monday, which occasionally flashes up on my reel of videos. So we just went to Hereford, had a look at it, took some photos. Now, in terms of how these maps were laid out between then and now, in terms of the latitude and longitude grid, it had never even crossed my mind as being a concern or a problem. But suddenly when you get into the nitty-gritty of how it proves a flat Earth, then you come across videos like this, thanks Brian, where, how is this going to be explained? It doesn't need to be explained, right? In fact, Brian had to spend some time yesterday explaining why this was even a problem for them.
Was there an...
Sorry, Brian.
Yeah. The problem they have is that there's certain things in reality that you can't look past. You can't mitigate for. It's just things that just do not fit with a spherical belief system. And the latitude and longitude grid is one of those things. And all maps are derived from the latitude and longitude grid, because that grid system existed before XYZ, which came from France. That grid system came after that. So, and that was more for the XY and the XYZ was more for surveying of the land, if you know what I mean. But the latitude and longitude, like, there's no way around it. Even according to UTM time, formerly Greenwich Mean Time, Australia only, like between Newcastle, north of Sydney, and Perth, there is only 2 hours of correct local time. Yet across the same exact latitude north of the equator, across the same distance, with the exception of 108 miles, there is 3 hours of correct local time between South Carolina and Southern California. So there's no way around that. Like, there's only one way that that's possible for that to be reality, as it is, because it is reality. And that is because the latitude and longitude grid is a north-centric grid that where all the longitude lines diverge out like a spider web. The latitude lines go around it like a spider web. That's the only way that's possible.
I always lose track of what's in the pipeline and what's been done. Is this going to be time bandits? And has that been done? Or is that something that's still being worked on by Adam?
He's doing some updates. So I might have to do my part of that presentation a week before he does his second part, because he's in contact with, I think that's French sailor Hervé.
That's all I need.
Some other stuff going on.
This hasn't been done yet.
It was done before, but he's doing a better version. He's doing a better version. Because we split it up. Instead of me and him doing the same presentation together, I'm doing a presentation on my bit, and then he's doing a presentation. So my bit will be the flat proving, and his bit will be the destruction of the globe via time zones.
Okay, but there's more to it in terms of the way it's made up now, isn't it? In terms of the expanse of the presentation, it incorporates that little preamble that you just went through, does it not?
Yeah, I don't even know what Adam. I haven't spoke to Adam what it is that he's bringing. I'm looking forward to saying it. But he's been in contact with Hervé, as I said, the French sailor, and he's bringing more into it. That he's putting more meat on the bones for the globe debunking, just to show how ridiculous the whole thing is on a globe, especially from a sailor's point of view. Because it was Hervé that reminded me when I listened to his videos off of the Book Conspiracies channel. It was Hervé that gave me the reminder that there is only 2 hours across Australia and 3 hours across America, across the same latitude. It's the 32nd degree north and south latitude. There is, and I remember that years ago, but like a lot of things that got pushed to the wayside. And I was like, that's what reminded me of it. That's why it was Hervé that reminded me of that thing. So it's really down to him, to be honest with you.
Well, that's going to be worth plugging and promoting when it's all polished up and ready to go. If you're a long-standing viewer and you want to know, where's the next turning point? Where's the next really exciting thing that's going to be happening? That's it. In terms of you as an audience member expanding out your understanding of how the world's been mapped and plotted into a sphere and where that falls apart. Also, from Brian's perspective, how it's being done in respect to a flat plane, how it proves a flat Earth, and a lot of the systems that are in place for our global positioning system, for example, have come from flat planes. But a lot of our opponents will take those global models and infer that means we've got a global surface, which we simply can't have, especially when it comes to latitude. But I think that's something that people will enjoy watching when it comes out, and we'll have to promote it heavily when we've got a time of when that's going to be.
Well, let me just point out something. You know McToon and his 10,000 pound or US dollar challenge?
Do I? I have told McToon 88 times in my comments. I don't watch Toon's videos. He's obsessed with me, not the other way around. He's literally left hundreds of comments on this channel. Nevertheless, 88 times I have told him now that you, Toon, require for flat Earth to measure the angles in your challenge. Go ahead, Brian.
Yeah, well, you could always ask him to incorporate Polaris as part of his challenge. That's going to really ruin him. But the thing about it is that with his challenge, what he's doing is he's asking you to take on something that would start with a flat plane. The measurements would be flat plane. But then when you go to plot out all the coordinates, what you're going to get is the coordinates that are based off of a globe. Latitude and longitude positions that are based off of a globe. You're not going to get them based off of the flat plane because they're not. The almanacs these days are not dealing with. They're not dealing with. As far as I know, they're not dealing with the original latitude and longitude layout. Yes, they must use chronometers, and they must adhere to the fact that there's only 2 hours of correct local time across Australia, but 3 across America at the same distance. So there's all kinds of contradictions go on there. The time zones prove without a shadow of a doubt that the Earth is a flat plane. There's absolutely no way around it. Actually, and just so the audience knows, the ballers are always asking us, "Where's your flat out map? Where's your flat out map?" If I could get Rob Durham maybe to do it for me, I know exactly what needs to happen to create the best, most. I can't say it's going to be perfect, but it'll be the most accurate and best world map that was ever created that I'm aware of. I know exactly what has to be done. And all it takes is someone with a bit of CAD experience, because I can't do it myself. You know, because all it is just putting things in the right places.
As we're shouting out things, I might as well just do the shout out that I was going to do at the end of the show now. So if you're a member, tomorrow I'm going to be recording a bonversation with John Le Bon. So he invited me a few days back to join him in producing a show for his website. So these typically do not go out to the public for a couple of years. So he tends to keep them on his website. So I will honour that and do the same. I won't publish it to the public. But what we'll do while we're producing or making that show, if you will, for his website, I'll leave it out to members. So typically there's sort of, maybe half a dozen or a dozen people that might be interested in watching that, because it tends to be a bit more drawn out, let's just say, when you're making a show that won't be anything like what ends up being produced by John Le Bon and put onto his website. But if you're interested in watching that getting produced, then feel free to join as a member, or if you are a member, then stay tuned after tomorrow's show. So 5 p.m. UK is when I'll be sort of connecting up with him and chit-chatting for a bit, and then he'll tell me when we get started and all the rest of it. So there'll be lots of background stuff, a bit like a pre-show. But I'm happy to put it out to a limited audience of mine that are paying to see it, because I don't think that particularly infringes in JLB terms with him trying to entice people onto his website, especially if I'm promoting it also, or cross-promoting it, which is to say there will be the nice version of it, which will be produced by John Le Bon on his website after it's been done. I don't know how long he takes to actually put his conversations out on his website, but feel free to check out johnlebon.com, or I think it's actually jlb.com, to see what he's got on there. There's plenty of free material if you don't want to actually join the website. He just put plenty of stuff, like I say, a couple of years later after he's produced it originally, for free, so you can obviously entice people to join and see the new stuff, which I will be a part of. So I'll be producing that for members only tomorrow, in light of John Le Bon putting it in a nice format on his own website, and that will be going out to his members when he's produced it, and then maybe in 2 years or even longer time he might put it out to the public on either his own website or on YouTube, because he just enticed people onto his site from YouTube and produced the odd YouTube video and live stream there as well. So if you're not heard of John Le Bon or JLB, then check him out, and check out his website. Hopefully he'll garner a few members to his website, as he solely supports himself via that particular means. So he doesn't have a commercialized YouTube channel. He only makes money off the back of the members on his website, which I think is extremely, number one, challenging to achieve. But having emigrated pretty much now from Australia to Bulgaria, based on the fact that he's built up enough of an audience base to want to subscribe to him on a long enough term basis to pay the bills with it. So in many ways, I'm very, very impressed with how he's managed to achieve that at all, from nothing, which is very, very impressive. So check out his website at the least, or if you're only willing to look at things on YouTube, he does have a YouTube channel as well. But as I say, if you're a member, check it out tomorrow. There won't be a big song and dance about my production, because it will just be, probably streamed live there and then, in all its glory. So there you go, if you're a member. Or if you want to watch that and you're not a member, please join as a member. It definitely helps me financially. And obviously that's the main purpose for me having any conversation with anybody ever. But given the fact that he will not be putting this out directly to the public, I want to obviously not do the same. I don't want to put these videos out to the public, so I'm happy to put it out to a dozen or so people on my members stream. Like I say, so John Le Bon's still got his exclusive material to put on his website. Anyway, join as a member if you haven't done so already, and if you are, check it out tomorrow. And check out JLB's website in the meantime. Should we do a bit more on this video before we round out the live stream in a few minutes' time, Brian?
Yeah, definitely, yeah.
An advanced civilization that existed long before ours that had mastered the art of ocean navigation?
When archaeologists talk about seafaring humans, what do they date that to?
The great seafaring adventure that is accepted by archaeology is called the Polynesian expansion. And it's a...
So who's this guy? This is Graham Handcock, right?
Yes.
And who is he? An archaeologist?
Yeah, pretty famous archaeologist. If you go to Netflix, he has a very popular, very recent series, I think a 6-part documentary series about what he's claiming about history and how history is wrong, kind of thing.
A remarkable story, and that occurs roughly 3,000 to 3,500 years ago. And those Polynesians were amazing ocean navigators. They could cross distances of thousands of kilometers with pinpoint accuracy. I mean, it's not an accident that the Polynesians found Easter Island. Finding Easter Island is a really challenging project.
Okay, and they would have done it by measuring the stars and their angles off a flat Earth. That's how they did it.
That's
they'd
correct.
have to have latitude.
Go ahead, Brian.
Sorry, longitude. Just saying they'd have to have longitude. They'd have to understand longitude in some way. They'd have to. They can't just use latitude. They'd have to understand longitude in some way.
Yeah. And with those angles measured off a flat Earth, you can navigate very accurately. Okay. For us, so far so good. Right?
And you know what's funny? When we were introduced to the Polynesians these days, when I first went to Australia, people were telling me, be careful of the Maori guys, because they only stopped eating people, I think, 100 years beforehand or something like that. And the Tongans are dangerous too and all this. So it was all about how these people were just a load of, brutal cavemen. But yet they were able to very accurately, navigate the world via the stars a couple of thousand years ago. So something's happened, you know what I mean? What happened to all that? They can't be a group of cavemen and be able to do that.
Easter Island is 2,000 miles from the coast of South America. It's 2,000 miles from the nearest other island, which is Tahiti. It's just a little speck in the middle of the ocean, but the Polynesians found it and settled there and appear to have brought a reproductively viable population there and appear to have made voyages back and forth. But
and we just used to go there and nick stuff, the British, that is. So in the British Museum in London, they've got one of those... What would you call them? Those heads from Easter Island? I don't know if they've got a particular name. Anybody know the title of those?
I know the ones you're on about, yeah.
Well, they've just got they've got several of them. just stolen them, basically. They're now in the is it Natural History Museum? I think it is. But yeah, they're just at the bottom of a stairwell.
But I'd just like to say that what is going on here is they're pre-assuming an ice age and pre-assuming that these people found these places. Like it's a lot of pre-assumption goes on because it's based off of, a lot of it is based off of an out of Africa type colloquial theory. This kind of evolution type theory.
Yeah, I know what you mean.
Colloquial theory.
What you're saying is the way that certain historians have written the expansion of a particular empire would infer that certain lands, well, they were just discovered when we found them. No. In many instances, they still existed on other maps. It's just it wasn't an expansion of your kingdom that suddenly you're so glorious for finding. You know what I mean?
Yes, exactly.
But yeah, the history is written by the victors, and that often, in this instance, I think that's the point of this from Brian, is causes problems when you've got heliocentric rhetoric that doesn't incorporate itself well into the way that history's been written. And when you unfold a new map, meaning old map because it's from the past, but new to you map that doesn't comport with your history timeline, suddenly it's a quote-unquote problem. No, this is not a problem at all, because we still navigate flat. That's how it all still functions. That's how we've developed all of the predictive time. How did the guy put it earlier? He's like predicting the future. No, the cycles of the stars. That was all done flat. And it's not a problem until you incorporate a sphere belief into it that means that you have no facility to have these understandings prior to those understandings. Suddenly it's a problem that needs explaining. Like, no, it isn't. Only for you.
Yeah, they have a lot of mysteries that they can't figure out, and they won't figure them out until they accept that the Earth is not a globe. You know what I mean? When they accept that all this stuff, globe, evolution, all these things, they're all nonsense. When they accept all that, then they'll actually they have some hope of getting to the bottom of the mysteries. But until they do that, they'll be just mysteries. You know what I mean? That will never be solved.
That was 3,000 to 3,500 years ago. That.
Go on, whoever it was.
Graham Hancock. Sorry, yeah, I just wanted to add. I read his books and I've been following him a little. One of his main beliefs is that we are going to get hit by an asteroid. And he is really proving that the big flood is due to an asteroid that hit the Antarctica. No, not Antarctica, but the Arctic. So he's a huge glober, and he thinks like the pyramids are connected to the stars, and he finds it incredibly crazy that the guys then knew that we were on a ball and we were floating through space. So he has this firm belief system.
But he's a soil from the sky guy.
Oh, yes. And he's also not an archaeologist. He's a writer that follows archaeology, just to be clear.
Have you got gain control on your mic? I'll take that as a no. Back off your mic a couple of inches, Gilly Pong.
I'm sorry. I didn't get that. Sorry.
I was just asking if you had a gain control. I was just going to say turn your gain down a little bit. You're just overloading your mic a little bit. That was all. Nothing too important. Don't worry.
That was not 12,800 years ago. And this is where archaeology's adamant position that ocean voyaging was begun.
For nearly 50 years now, did you...
Adds my apologies.
By the Polynesians, and that there was no major ocean voyages before that, I think needs to be strongly questioned, and it needs to be strongly questioned in the light of this DNA evidence from the Amazon, rather than rejecting the evidence.
So, from what I'm gleaming from this, he's saying we need to strongly question it. Now, whether or not his motivation will be to strongly question it so we have a nice heliocentric solution, but he's still saying, you know, it doesn't match. He's raising the objection at the very least, is he not?
Yeah, he is, but he's one of these people. He raises a lot of objections, but he always comes to a globe answer. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah,
Of some kind. Yeah.
I know exactly what you mean. It's like I sometimes see us as filling that position where he's raising the objection so he can overcome it within the heliocentric rhetoric. We are potentially here so that we can raise objections, and the general populace, that's anti-flat earthers in this regard, the ones who respond, our respondents, if you will come up with the solutions. Now, he's playing both parts of that particular equation, isn't he? Here's a problem. It doesn't fit with heliocentrism. Look, it doesn't fit. Let's make it fit with heliocentrism. In other words, there's always that skew towards, you know, this is a problem that needs solving. We wouldn't even agree with that in the first instance. But when he raises the problem, because it doesn't fit, at least now we are aware, because like I said earlier, up until this, I didn't know that there would be any problem with heliocentrism in terms of even the Mapper Monday, which goes back much further and is flat. You just don't think about it, do you? Shout out to Vlad. Says, hold on. Good show today. Thanks, Nathan and panel. And shout out to everyone in Discord and YouTube. Well, thank you for your super chat. Really appreciate it.
Thank you, Vlad. Well, just to add to that guy, remember that guy that came on, or a couple of those guys came on at that AMA on the politics server? They started having it saying, is your problem that nuclear weapons may not exist, and you know, all these kind of things, all these issues that they personally had that they wanted to project onto you. Well, he's a more popular and educated version of them, where he's like, these are problems. Yeah, for you, Graham, not for me. Do you know what I mean? You have a global problem, a heliocentric problem that doesn't fit with what you're finding. And so you want me to think of that as a problem when it's not. It's not my problem at all.
I've actually got that lined up if you want to hear it.
Yeah.
Adobe Stock's multi-asset subscription
on my own video. Hold on. Rockets don't prove a sky vacuum, but you lent on them up until now and are telling me that they wouldn't exist because I'm saying that your sky vacuum, the rockets you think go to, doesn't exist. It can't exist. Gas fills space. It's a law of nature. Do I care what your concerns about military rockets are now? No, they are your concerns. Now that you have a painful, fundamental shift in your reality, you thought there was an area of volume that gas wasn't filling that rockets could go to. So the rockets go up in a vector upwards or outwards, depending on your ilk. And as they go up or out from the sphere Earth, they go through the yummy, yummy gas at high pressure that we're all breathing until some of the gas just hangs around at the Kármán line, stopping carrying on in its current vector. Yeah? No, that's not real. That's a violation of natural law that leaves you with no sky vacuum to believe in. Your concern about rockets is not mine. Hope that's clear. Don't project your pain onto me.
So then you don't believe in nuclear war then? That's the way... Like,
or did I say that, Mr. I'm going to project
No,
my pain about nuclear war? Yeah.
There was another guy, too, I remember a while ago, that said that to you. So you don't believe in nuclear war?
Well, that's where the term share your pain comes from. Because where we get a lot of conspiratardia in terms of people saying, well, here's my explanation for what rockets would or wouldn't do in a sky vacuum. That is rooted in what he asked me. Well, that would mean that there's this, that, and the other issue with something I've lent on as a globe proof. Yeah? And I want to steer people well away from that moving forward. No, just understand how it's flat. Don't suddenly go, well, I used to think that it doesn't matter. Now you know that you've got a firm grounding in how the world is actually measured. There are certain things that, yeah, you may become aware of deception around you. And initially, that's probably quite scary. But don't worry, life goes on. You know what I mean? You don't suddenly have to go batting on the door of NASA with a pitchfork and a torch, demanding answers for their lies. But you might decide to turn your back on them. All right, well, I don't value the information from that source anymore because they're certified liars. There we go. So, you know, you just have a slight shift in terms of how you deal with information where previously you just sucked it up and accepted it. But it doesn't mean that you've suddenly got to pose those questions and fears and concerns onto the messenger who tells you Earth's measured flat. In this case, me. Well, you say rockets won't exist, don't you? No, I don't say that. No. You worry about it, not me. Anyway. That was called The Globe Pain of the Space Lie. Broken Men. And it's on the Nathan Oakley 1980 channel. Let him know about... No. Wait.
An attempt should be made to consider what that might mean.
Well, it's interesting because we know that the Egyptians had boats.
Yeah.
And so, what? I mean, if there were boats 4,500 years ago, why do we think that they didn't try them out in the ocean? That doesn't make any sense, especially if they existed 1,000 years prior, which is also possible.
Archaeologists wouldn't argue that the Egyptians had boats, but that is still within the framework of accepted history. It's
Again, accepted history, frameworks. Does this all sound familiar to anybody?
Yeah. Frameworks accepted, yeah. The Giza pyramid, I think, and the pyramids in general around Egypt, they are aligned with certain stars. I can't remember all the details, but my cousin, who trained as an underwater archaeologist, but he trained as a land archaeologist first, he was told that they were flooding a valley in Egypt back maybe back in the 80s or 90s or something. Maybe my timeline is wrong. But they moved this thing that was aligned to the sun, I think, at the December solstice or something like that. Kind of like in Newgrange in Ireland, where the sun shines in there on the December solstice that morning into that chamber every year without fail for thousands of years. It was a similar thing, and they moved this because they wanted to flood this valley, and they could never get it in the right position again to make the same thing happen. They were always a day late or a day early, no matter where they moved it, that they couldn't do anything with it. So that tells you that the Egyptians understood the sky. So if they understood the sky, then you can be sure that they were able to navigate.
It's the notion of a global navigating culture in the Ice Age that archaeologists can't swallow. It's a subject that I've kept on coming up against over a number of years. I think the best evidence for it is
evidence what? The Ice Age, or for the navigation prior to your timeline? Which one's he offering evidence for? I wonder.
The second one.
The second one. The first one's just accepted as a presupposition. I see. Thank you for letting me know, Chocolate.
Ancient maps which show the world as it looked during the last ice age. We're talking about maps that were drawn roughly between the 1300s and the 1700s.
And when do you say that the ice age was? Before that a little bit? That sounds like a problem for you with your arbitrarily ascribed ice ages and a timeline of 65 million years. That all sounds like a very big problem. Especially when you're deriving these timelines from radial values that have been measured off a flat plane. That's definitely a massive problem for you. Doesn't work with your reification at all, does it? Go ahead, Brian, as it's your point.
How can these maps be pre-ice age? That's what he said, wasn't it? Pre-ice age?
Yeah, it was, yeah.
The looks of it. Yeah. How can it be pre-ice age when they proved there was a globe in Greece 2,000 years ago? Do you know what I mean? This nonsense. The Greek Hipparchus and all these people, Eratosthenes, that's all 2,000 plus years ago. Pythagoras, he's 2,000 plus years ago. All these people, they're way back. Babylonians are way before them. So how did an ice age happen in between all that and now? And his globe still, you know what I mean? His proof of his globe is all this stuff from back in Alexandria. Well, it's not, it's all rubbish, but it's all made up stuff. But the point is that they claim about stuff. They claim, we've known it's the globe for 2,500 years. Well, the ice age would have kind of ended that. You know what I mean? You'd have to start from scratch again, wouldn't it?
Yeah. It's like we've known the Earth is a globe for 2,000 years, but like a few things 100 years ago are kind of messing us up. They're not up to snuff.
In other words, in relatively recent history. However, these maps were largely based on much older source maps, which they copied. And we can say that for sure, because one of the famous maps is the Piri Reis map, which was created by a Turkish admiral called Piri Reis in the year 1513. Actually, only a corner of his map has survived.
You say only a corner?
Yeah, it's only a portion of his map that we actually get to see. There was a bigger map, supposedly.
I see. It's hard to get a scale on how big they've got, but I would imagine this is probably 6 or 8 foot wide when it's all 4 pieces, right? No, no, I don't either.
It was originally a world map. We now just have a bit that shows the east coast of South America and North America and the west coast of Africa. Piri Reis writes in that map that it is in his own handwriting that he based it on more than 100 older source maps, some of which had come from the Library of Alexandria. In other words,
is he now going to express the problem within a heliocentric timeline, or just move on?
It's that maps had been, when the Library of Alexandria had been destroyed in the 4th century AD or whenever it was, some of its contents had been rescued and brought to Constantinople, which became the Turkish capital, and Piri Reis had access to those maps, and he incorporated information from those maps on his maps.
I started this journey on my own.
Yeah, what he's basically saying is they knew about longitude before 1700. Oh no.
Yeah.
Navigational information. And this is one of a whole category of maps which are extremely hard to explain. All of them based on older source maps, now lost.
Just hard to explain because, what we've got up on screen now, this looks like a Mercator, is it not? Can you see the live stream, Brian?
I can't, Nathan. I'm just on the meet, so I can't see it.
No worries.
All of them incorporating extremely precise relative longitudes and latitudes. Latitude is not that difficult a technological feat, but longitude is a difficult technological feat.
Longitude is only possible on, what, a flat Earth or a globe Earth? Latitude.
It's what you measure.
Yeah,
well, it's not a problem on a globe Earth, it's a problem.
Hold on, let's not steal his thunder. Both of us want blood. Go ahead, Brian. This is the whole point of we getting to the major point of your video now, right? This is why you've suggested this. Go ahead.
That's a good portion of it. Like, that's what you measure. When you're measuring directly from north to south, you're measuring longitude. Right? You're measuring longitude from north to south. There's 360 longitude lines. You're measuring them when you're measuring the angles to Polaris. Right? You're not just getting your latitude. The distances, that 69.04 horizontal miles per degree, which would have been in a different unit of measurement at one time, still horizontal. That is, all those are giving you a length of a longitude line. You know what I mean? This thing about, well, you just use Polaris there, latitude. No, you don't. You're not. You're measuring a longitude line. You're measuring along the length of a longitude line when you're going directly from north to south. You know, you're measuring the length of a longitude line. Now, the 24-hour divide that happened was based off of a local noon, not a solar noon. But they knew about this way before. It comes back to, you know what it comes back to, Nathan? Kepler, right, needed the original sun cycle he needed to know that, which he got from astrology, the same with Tycho Brahe, right? They needed to know this or Kepler needed to know it to amalgamate it with the Copernican solar system model, right? So longitude needed to exist for that to happen. You know what I mean? It's like, it's total nonsense. There's no way that longitude didn't exist. It's shown here. Well, he's agreeing that it did exist. But now he's going to go on to try and explain how it's very difficult to understand how longitude could have existed, because longitude is a big drama for us, because we didn't know about longitude till we got chronometers. No, people did know about longitude. It's just our society obviously had an issue with it. But people of the past, they didn't have any problem with it.
Longitude involves a chronometer. It involves knowing the time at the place you began your voyage and the local noon as well, and calculating the difference between them. You need a chronometer that will keep accurate time at sea with the motions of a ship. And it's just a plain fact that our civilization did not invent such a chronometer until the late 18th century. Before that, we didn't know what longitude we were at, and ships were constantly sailing unexpectedly into coastlines that they thought were hundreds of miles further away. So that
you notice the dogged assurance that his rhetoric with his timeline is the affirmative position that can be stated so confidently, in spite of everything that he's just led up to in this instance contradicting that. Yet, that is the firm position, all based on belief, and everything that contradicts that comes prior is the problem, in quotes, right, Brian?
Yes, exactly, Nathan. The problem is all the things that don't fit with what is officially accepted, and so must be true. Yeah, that's what he's saying, isn't it?
The discovery of the technique to do longitude was a major civilizational advance. Its presence in maps, based on much older source maps that actually show the world as it looks during the last ice age, suggests that somebody during the last ice age was mapping the world and had mastered the technique of calculating longitude. Classic example of these maps, and I make
So another flat representation of the world, so it can work with flat measurements of angles to stars to develop this flat grid that existed pre-timeline for you, which you're still describing as maps made in the Ice Age. Why? Well, because that's your timeline, isn't it? That's the only reason.
Well, to use longitude correctly, you have to treat the Earth as flat.
Yeah.
Because even Hervé, the French sailor who was on Taboo Conspiracies channel, even he was pointing out, as I said earlier, that there's only 2 hours of correct local time across Australia. And he had to know that, and that had to be a fact when he was sailing. Now, on a globe, there's 3 hours of local time between, because there's 45, I think it's 45 degrees of latitude across Australia on a globe projection. But in reality, Australia sits within, not across, but within 30 degrees of latitude. So if you're sailing and you're using a chronometer, you have to address the Earth as flat, because otherwise Australia is going to have more than 2. Australia either has more than 2 hours of correct local time, and chronometers are wrong and a waste of time, or chronometers are right and Australia only has 2 hours of correct local time across its 32nd latitude. It's either one or the other. Do chronometers work? Yes. Does Australia have only 2 hours of correct local time across the 32nd degree latitude south? Yes. So can the Earth be a globe? No. It's that simple.
Make a point of this is what's called the Pinkerton world map, which was drawn in the year 1818, and it was based on the latest navigational information at that time. I reproduced that map in the book. What's missing from the map, entirely missing, is Antarctica. There's just a hole at the bottom of the world. There's nothing there. The reason that Antarctica is not there
is an antipodal assumption at the bottom of the world. I mean, to me, it looked like a South Pole-centric projection. Now, that projection may have, in the 1800s, most likely come from a globe projection that was taken by wrapping around said sphere from elevation angle measurements to Polaris. But when you're developing a system for the South that you haven't quite figured out yet, you end up with all sorts of different variations. However, this particular iteration has got him describing it as an antipodal assumption. Yeah? That's how he phrased it.
Yeah. Sorry, I cut in on you. 1 second, Nathan. Yeah, he went straight to a map from 1818. But that's a long time after the Perry-Rees map. Wouldn't you think he should be focusing on the Perry-Rees map and maps, any older map, or any evidence of where those maps came from or where they got their information from? Like this thing about the South Pole, there's nothing there. It's just a black hole kind of thing. It's like, and I can look at that map. I can't see it now, but if I looked at that map, I could tell off the time zones whether or not it was a correct world map. You know what I mean? Whether it was correct or incorrect. It's nonsense. It's like when Google Earth for years, when you want to see the Arctic. At one time, the Arctic was just a black hole on Google Earth. Then it was water. Then it was ice. Then it was water again. Then it was a black hole again. Then it was water again. Then it was ice again. Do you know what I mean? They don't know what to put in there because they're not telling you what it really is. Whatever it is, who cares? Who cares?
That our civilization hadn't discovered Antarctica in 1818. Oh. So they couldn't authentically put it on a map in 1818. Actually, we discovered...
Hear the bias, man. It's outrageous. Well, that's us, whoever's this kingdom that's being described, didn't know about it there, for it couldn't have existed. That's the logic. Hold on a second. Is that denying the antecedent?
Yes, maybe so.
Boom! I've never spotted one before. There's never been one.
Discovered it in 1819, and that's when it starts appearing on modern maps. The problem is that Antarctica appears repeatedly on these much older maps, and it appears in the right place, and a bit bigger than it is today, but very much as it looked during the last ice age. So what all of this suggests to me is that the world was mapped and explored by a global seafaring culture with a level of technology that was at least equivalent to ours at the end of the 18th century during the ice age.
Wasn't there also a map of Greenland?
It gets confusing when you juxtapose
said
it
the
with...
problem is?
Yeah, go ahead.
Whose problem is it again?
The globe's problem.
Oh, okay.
Can I point out something? He said we didn't discover Antarctica until 1819. Now, that would mean he's talking about below, you're talking 70 degrees, 80 degrees south. Yeah, well, not below, but past there, I should say. Just to turn a phrase from years of saying it the wrong way. But in I'm looking at it right now, the Gleason's map, 1892, I think what year did that come out? But it came out along November 15th, 1892, patent allowed, right? Now, according to Gleason, right, and his map is based off of it's a sun calculator, basically, right? According to him, on the longest day of the year, south of the equator, the sunlight never gets further than 80 degrees south. Now, so how could they discover Antarctica if Antarctica is 80 degrees south and further, more or less? How can they discover all this Antarctica place if, according to Gleason, there's no light? If you go by what he's saying. I'm not saying there is or isn't, but I'm saying there's no light there, according to Gleason. Even on the longest day of the year south of the equator. So It's just a lot of pre-assumption and nonsense. Graham Hancock, you're just coming up with nonsense because you don't know. You just can't accept it's not a globe, Graham.
Greenland that showed it underneath the ice?
Yes, there are. And another intriguing thing, I mentioned the Piri-Reis map just now. Shown on the Piri-Reis map, lying off the east coast of North America, is a large island with a row of megaliths, like a road of megaliths, running up the middle of it. That island is in the exact place of the Grand Bahama Banks. So this island...
What is he saying? It's just saying that it's very accurate at this point, though, isn't he? That's what he's really doing.
Yeah.
Okay.
Is sitting there off the southeast coast of North America.
Look at the way they used to draw things back then, too.
And what you see running down the middle of it is this road-like feature of megaliths. I'll point them out again.
I see, right there, yeah.
These here. These here. Now, the thing is, there was a long period of my life when I did a lot of scuba diving, and I was looking at underwater structures, and one of the...
Okay, now this is pretty cool, you've got to admit, right?
sites I dived on was the Bimini Road, which is in the Grand Bahama Banks. And the Bimini Road is exactly where that island is. And here's the issue. I don't care whether the Bimini Road is natural or man-made. For me, the mystery is that it is shown above water on that map. And the last time it was above water was thousands and thousands of years ago.
Having it on the map. Go on, Brian.
No, you go first, Nathan.
Well, no, you go ahead.
Well, my point, what I was going to say is I don't trust any of these older maps, to be totally honest with you, because even I've thought about this before with the Piri-Reis map and others. It's like we're told this map came from a certain place at a certain time, blah, 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 blah. But we don't know if these maps were not made back when they said. We don't know if they're more recent and being claimed to be there from the past, like supporting a globe in some way. Do you know what I mean? Because everything he's talking about there is about like the Bimini Road, back when that was above the water level as opposed to below it. What it is now, you have to dive to see it. You can't see it above the water. Do you know what I mean? So I don't even know how true the Piri-Reis story is or any of the rest of it. But it is interesting that there's problems turning up for these people.
This is the map on Monday. It's on screen now. This is the one hanging up in Hereford Cathedral.
So for me, this is all evidence that we shouldn't dismiss the possibility that our ancestors had achieved a level of technology where...
Here we go. Now let's not discount the nonsense that's been proposed thus far to make our timeline work, because that's what he's about to say, or he's just said it, in fact, right? Let's not discount the fact that our, technologically advanced ancestors within our timeline, and I'm just waiting for him to say came from outer space or something stupid like that.
They could explore and map the world's oceans. We shouldn't dismiss that. And the whole...
Dismiss what? They did! You've got the maps to show it! What the hell? What's this guy's malfunction? Am I missing something? Sorry, what are we not dismissing? The very facts that you've got at your fingertips? They just disagree with your timeline. So what? Well, we shouldn't dismiss them. Yeah. You'd be, it'd be an outrage if you did. Yeah?
Yeah.
The effort of archaeology has been to dismiss the significance of the Bimini Road.
How would they...
Oh, I see. So you're going to juxtapose that with our predecessors in my field just discounted this evidence because they had no correlation with something we found underwater. Therefore, it was just dismissed by them. But I'm not going to dismiss this glaring contradiction in timeline. Maps that we won't be dismissing. No. Shifting these blame goalposts over to something that has no relevance. There's no issue with the actual evidence that you can show to be true. Those facts in terms of the timeline and when those maps were made and can be shown to be made by way of a historical standard just doesn't tie up with your timeline. Oh, I'm not going to discount them. Yeah, you better not. They just discredit your timeline that you're still incorporating into it while you're saying you won't be discounting them. What, and they're disagreements with your timeline? You're not stating that, are you?
They dismiss that.
Well, they say
it's just me.
They say it's totally natural. I can tell you, I absolutely do not think it's natural.
And now focus on the burden, comparative shift with the Bimini Road or whatever he's calling this. So he's not confronting the timeline issues within the narrative. It's let's discuss the former people who discounted evidence and how that compares and stacks up when we are going to critique anything here. It's going to be the comparison I drew that's going to get the critique.
I think it's a man-made structure, but the argument is that it's a kind of beach rock that...
No. The argument, you see, ladies and gentlemen, if you're a bit slow, let's just say not quite sharp enough, is about why these maps don't fit in with this timeline. Notice how it seems that he's answering a question that addresses problems that, there wasn't really a focus on the Bimini Road. That wasn't what this discussion was about, was it? But yet he's going to address those problems right now with the Bimini Road, right? So all's fair at the end of this. Everything's been squared up. He's addressed the problems with the comparison that he drew to actual problems that don't fit in with his timeline. That aren't problems. There's just older maps that still work with the stars on a flat Earth. Yeah, they do. All of them do, without exception.
Forms in these blocky formations.
Does it? Is that
yes, beach rock does form in blocky formations, but here I believe...
Who cares? Sorry, why do I care suddenly about the Bimini Road and the rock formations that are forming on it underneath the water? Did anybody have this in mind while we were discussing the maps and the modelling of a world that's flat and angles to stars? Suddenly we were worrying about rock formations underwater. I wonder why that happened. Oh, well, I'm not that sharp. I'll just breeze past this.
Believe that the beach rock has been used as a construction material. But, I repeat, the key issue is not whether the Bimini Road is man-made or not.
It's about these maps and that.
The key issue is that it features on a map above water.
Not the timeline with the maps, but the Bimini Road being above water. That's the main problem. He's a magician. It stinks of Tyson-like magicianry, doesn't it?
Yes. I never trusted the guy. Yeah, let's focus on this one small part that takes away from the big problem we have that we've been claiming for a long time, that nobody knew what longitude was prior to the 1700s. Well, actually prior to the 1800s, because before the chronometer. And well, here is longitude on maps that are much older than that. Anyway, the Bimini Road. Let's focus on that.
Precisely. Okay, so as always, in this case, it's a videographer who has responded to Joe Rogan and Graham Handcock, but that videographer's name is Brain Station. So I'm putting a link to the video as it was their adaptation of that particular interview that we were critiquing in that instance. So please let them know. At Nathan Oakley 1980 sent me, and I'll explain the call to action while hopefully some of the live stream audience that are actually watching right now do go and click on that link and say to the videographer at Nathan Oakley 1980 sent me, with a view to the videographer in this case, Brain Station, doing the same for us, which is to say we receive absolutely no algorithmic love whatsoever. Being flat earthers, we are without question suppressed, censored. Now it's been in doublespeak 1984 style rephrased to promotion of preferred content. That's a fancy doublespeak way of saying censorship, which is what we suffer here. Ultimately speaking, if you want to look at it as, well, we just promote all the other stuff way, way above you. Yes, that's just the same way of saying we suppress you. Anyway, hopefully this videographer, if they were to see links to this going by, because people are letting them know at Nathan Oakley 1980 sent me, he'd do the courtesy of putting a link to my video if he was to make a response, which is the main reason we do this. Not just to build you up in the algorithmic love, Brain Station, or anybody else. We do these link call-outs and get people to go and comment on your video, helping you along in the algorithm. I can waffle like this for at least 2 or 3 minutes while people actually do my call to action. Go and let them know at Nathan Oakley 1980 sent me. I'll do another little shout out. Hopefully a few people will join as members as a result of a members only stream going out, in light of the fact that John LeBon does not release his videos to the public for at least a couple of years. He publishes them on his site. Ergo, I won't be releasing that particular video when I make it to the public. I'll just keep it as members only for myself also. So if you do want to watch that being produced, which is a conversation for the JLB.com website, which I suggest you also check out, or indeed the John LeBon /JLB YouTube channel, then do that as well. And maybe let him know at Nathan Oakley 1980 sent me. But yeah, join as a member if you want to take part in that tomorrow. I'm going to be doing it at 5 p.m. UK time after the live stream finishes and the after show has finished recording. So obviously I'll still be set up to do that chat with John LeBon. So if you want to listen along, then you'll have to be a member to do so, like I say, so it doesn't infringe on him hacking it up, making a nice production and putting it out on his website for his members. Any other call to actions anybody wants to do before I round out this live stream? Brian, anybody?
Could somebody get in contact with me if Rob Dorn is with somebody who's got good CAD experience? Because I need them to make the flat Earth map. Thank you. Last night that I couldn't get into. I tried watching it last year, and it was so many starts and stops and all this halftime stuff. It's like I didn't know I was even watching a sporting event. Just there's no sport happening. You know, that kind of a.
Yeah, trust me, I hear you on that, brother.
Yeah, Neil told me it was the wrong thing to watch if I wanted to see some good American football, and he's right. But I just tried watching it last year, and it was like I remember the halftime show. It was some rap stuff and stuff went on, but other than that, I don't remember any game being played. I don't remember one bit of the actual on-pitch action. Not one bit. So I don't know. Not exactly. It doesn't bring people over towards American football. That's for sure.
You around, Neil?
I think Neil is gone. He's at the dropping.
Do you remember were you around in the pre-show when I told him that occasionally one of my monitors will turn off? Just before I hit the live button, that happened. My main monitor, the smaller of the two that I can read things off, just turned off. What the hell? Then it came back on. It's also got a permanent memory error warning. So it's got like a 6 segments display on the motherboard. And when there's an issue, it lights up with an issue code. It's got a permanent issue code now. So I looked through it earlier this morning. Oh, just before I started the live show, early this afternoon. And while my wife was still in here working, I looked through and went, "You see those 2 lights?" She's like, "Yeah." I'm like, "That's the 6 segment display saying there's a memory issue." She was like, "Oh, all right." I was like, "It's working." Didn't particularly give me any issues other than one of the screens flashing on and off during the just before the intro.
At least they're getting a couple of shows out of it. That's something.
Yeah, we're good yesterday. A nice show yesterday.
Well, that's because of Craig. I'll give all credit to Craig, right? So through a process of elimination by trying all the different slots in all different orders, he figured out that one of the memory channels has gone. Well, that could be the memory sticks, the motherboard, or the CPU, right? Well, I've gone through several sticks of RAM. Well, the very first set that I had, which cost an absolute bucket load of money because DDR5 was brand new, so it was like a 600 quid kit, which wasn't a 600 quid kit. It was 250 quid kits, because that's how it works out, but that's what they'd stuck in there. Anyway, the point being, they were expensive. Well, I ended up sticking them on eBay to pay for the third set of RAM, which I sold both pairs for like 60 quid a pair, because that's roughly how much they're worth secondhand now. Like 16 months later, a 600 quid kit. That was what the builder charged. You know what I mean? Anyway, and it wasn't a full set of 4, which I won't moan about now. But the point being that, I flogged them to get the third set thinking I've constantly got memory issues. It's always the RAM. Well, it could always be either the slot on the motherboard or the chip, i.e. the memory controller. That maybe the channel's broken in that memory controller as opposed to the motherboard. So I don't know which of the two is buggered. But having put one of the channels out of commission, the one that was presumably causing the most problems, and only using one channel, has meant that actually, although it's very, very fussy and runs like garbage, it doesn't crash. And prior to Craig coming around, it wouldn't stay on. It would get to Windows and just go bzzz and blue screen. Now, at least, like I say, I've run 2 or 3 days worth of shows, but like I say, with memory warnings flashing on and things sort of flashing on and off, it's like, it feels like it's dying. I've got to be honest. And he's keeping it on life support by moving things around. You know what I mean? That's how it feels. I shouldn't laugh. It's because I've stopped caring. A few months back,
at this point, it is laughable.
I just stopped caring. So it was all super serious. Well, I'm like, I've got to get this working. I've got to get this working. And then it reached a point where I was telling the audience, look, at some point, I'll have to just cut my losses and say it's going to be replaced. And it did. I was like, one more crash and I'll reach that point. And then one more crashes and and I'm like, no, I'm just going to resign myself to this. It's never going to work. And then you stop caring. You stop sitting up till 3 a.m. trying to test and tune things. You just go, yeah. When my wife told me this morning that it had crashed and she couldn't get it to work, I was like, yeah. And I didn't immediately rush down and sit and get IDA out. I just went, oh, well, I'll have to figure out. That's something I still don't know if yesterday's show actually completed its upload, because it's obviously crashed while it's normally doing that process. It might have been that it went up. I can't remember if that was in the middle of uploading or not when it's crashed. I just don't know. And normally I'd spend an hour figuring that out and sorting out crashed uploads, and I haven't done any of that. Anyway.
Well, it gets to the point where somewhere over the rainbow, a computer waits, where there will be no more crashing, just everlasting shows, Nathan.
Made a video log about it, and I told them about me showing the clock on my computer, Brian. It was you, wasn't it? Because I said it was you in my story.
What? Oh, yeah, the clock. Yeah, it's our watch. Yeah, the 25-year-old watch.
Just for the audience's benefit, now I know it. I'm sure it was you, because I said it in that video log. So if it was someone else, I just have to make a correction. I don't. It was Brian.
No, it was me. You were talking to me about it yesterday.
Right, I'm talking to Brian, and I'm like, check this out, and I show him my watch and show him the time on my watch, which is obviously reasonably accurate. Right, it might be a couple of minutes off. It's an old wind-up watch, and then I point the camera up at my clock that's on the computer, and it's completely wrong and stopped. Now, don't get me wrong, the rest of the computer's working, but this clock just stopped. I'm like, this is a 20-odd-year-old, maybe even longer now. It's probably a 30-year-old watch. It is, even though it's wind-up, more reliable than this $6,000 computer at keeping time, which is bloody awful. But laughable.
Yeah, you're doing the right thing. At this stage, all you can do is laugh at the situation, because it's not worth any more stress. It's not worth it.
Even resolving it is stressful. I went into Craig's shop, right, and he's like, all I did was look up what is the modern motherboard. They don't sell the motherboard that's in there anymore, so it's like, what's the modern equivalent? Look at the model number, look at what's on options, and look at YouTube reviews. So I did that for a few hours, and then found one that was well reviewed and sent it to Craig. So he then presumably tries to locate it, and he couldn't. He's like, maybe this is only available in North America because I can't find it. I'm like, great. So then he puts me in front of, like he does, the trade sites that he's buying stuff from for suppliers on. He's like, well, just pick what you want and, just have a look through. And I've got my daughter with me because I didn't make it to a lesson through road closures. So I have got a little bit of time to actually do this. But within about 5 minutes, I'm like, it all just looks the same. And I haven't got a clue what I'm looking at, because that's not the way I'd approach things. I'd start looking at YouTube videos, right? For someone who's done that and does know how to do it. So eventually I just got sick of it, and I'm like, what would you put in? And within 5 seconds, he just went straight to a motherboard and was like that. And it was literally less than half the price of what was in there. So I'm like, okay, fine, write down the price. Because someone had suggested to me, what do you need to get this sorted out? I won't mention who, because they haven't said that they wanted that information out there. But nevertheless, someone was like, let me know what you need, and I'll see if I can give you the money to buy it. But I didn't know what, so I'm asking Craig, tell me what it's going to cost to replace that bit. I'll write down the price and just tell him. So he writes down the price. I write down the price of the chip, which is crap. It's expensive, and there's no wiggle room. You can't just buy a different chip from a different manufacturer. Well, you can, but then I've got to piss around changing blocks in the machine and all sorts of other faff. That was another issue that came up. So his son's there, and he's like, just change it for Ryzen, because it's better, and it's more efficient and generates less heat. Like, I can't, because then I'm into the same faff as with the graphics card. I've got to change the block on the machine, and that will take 2 months from Monster Labo, and I don't want to do that. I just want to change it like for like. And then he was like, well, in 6 months' time, they're bringing out the 15th gen. I'm like, yeah, that was my original plan, but it's got so bad that I don't care about that either. Like being on the cutting edge of new tech, just whatever's current is probably a bit cheaper anyway because it's been out for a while, which is surely the case, right? Anyway, he shows me this 300 quid or whatever it is motherboard plus tax plus everything else, and I'm like, that seems stupidly cheap given that they're normally like 600, 700, 800 quid for these things. So I go and have a look at a review for that specific thing that is picked out. And sure enough, same guy I normally go to check out reviews on things like that, frame chasers. He's like, yep, this is a great motherboard. Okay, voltages are a little bit high, but at least it'll be stable. And he moans a little bit about it, but basically says, yeah, it's pretty much as good as the Asus for less than half the price. You're like, okay, so my tech guy really does know his stuff then. You know, number one, he's obviously recommending stuff that's immediately getting good reviews without even having to try hard to look for that product. And from a trustworthy review source, and it was legitimately like half the price. You're like, okay, well that's encouraging. So anyway, that's where I'm at with this stupid computer. Hopefully, it'll be getting a new motherboard and CPU, and then I can just forget about it and never think about it again.
You're lucky he's honest because he could have told you, sent you in any direction, and then you'd have to go back to him for all the repairs that he caused that he caused to have to happen.
Well, maybe. I mean, when I recommended a Gigabyte board to him, it was like, Gigabyte boards, they're just the same as everyone else in terms of how much reliability you'll get out of them, right? They're all much for muchness. Some of them are good with some products and some are bad with others. But Gigabyte specifically have been really fussy with returns. So they've been not honouring their warranties with motherboards, with little issues that are arguably their fault, and they're just being a pain in the arse. So from that perspective, personally, I wouldn't recommend Gigabyte at the moment. But that's just the state of play as I know it as a retailer, as he's telling me. I'm like, well, what do you put in? He's like, every single time I put in an ASRock, I don't think about it afterwards and they don't yo-yo their way back. So I'd probably put in an ASRock. And like I say, he went straight to something that looks like what's in there now from Asus for 800 quid, I think it was retail. And it was 300 quid. When someone shows you something like that, you kind of, there's a sharp intake of breath because you think that almost seems too cheap now. You know, if you go, oh, well, this would be what I would buy. ASRock's a bit of a cheaper brand than Asus, and it's 600 quid. You go, oh, yeah, well, that makes sense. It's a bit cheaper than the 800 quid one in there, and it's not as reputable a brand, but you say it's more reliable, great. But when it's like less than half the price, you go, is that going to be crap? Because it seems too cheap, almost. Anyway, that was my logic and my day and my morning.
Well, the same thing can happen with cars. You know what I mean? You can buy a Jeep that's made by Suzuki or something. It's only a fraction of the price that a Land Rover costs, and it matches the Land Rover and even beats it. You know, something like that. You know, the same thing can happen. It's like price doesn't always equal standard.
My parents had that exact example, right? My parents used to live on a farm, and when they did, they had two 4x4s. One was a Suzuki Jimny, and the other one was a Suzuki Grand Vitara XL. Now, the Grand Vitara XL was leather seats and nice big V6 and big luxury SUV off-roader with proper, ladder chassis and designed to do what you'd expect when it's on a farm, up and down massive hills. And it was very capable, right, with low range and all the rest of it. However, the Jimny, which was 1/10 of the price and was horrendous in terms of its reviews, everybody hated it, would go up and down anything. It would literally be thick with snow and ice. Everyone else is stranded, even in their big 4x4s. And this thing would be towing them out. Literally. It was nuts. It was really capable. And in the last 2 or 3 years, they re-released it with some Barbie-style fairing. And now everybody loves it. It's like the London cool, chic 4x4, like little mini 4x4. It's like they go from being, oh, that's an awful car, because it had no pickup and it was not very well geared for normal roads and things that you'd expect out of a crappy little 4x4, which it was. But when it came to going up a hill on ice in low range, it could beat everything. So it doesn't necessarily follow that cheap stuff's garbage if it's built for purpose. Yeah? I think that's your point.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, the Jimny, it makes sense because the Japanese are smart about what they do. And they would have thought that out. They would have said, if it's got good power in the low gears and it's got a pretty big wheel, a pretty high off the ground wheel situation, and it's got power in the low gears, then and we were going to make it to be a smaller vehicle, then it's going to be light. It's going to have more power, low gears, and it's going to be light. It's probably short wheelbase as well, won't it? So it's going up and down things that bigger vehicles can't. That they have all this weight and a long wheelbase. That's not. Whereas the Jimny only needed, like, if you go low power, the low gear power for the Jimny in relation to the low gear power for a Land Rover or something, like the Land Rover probably, the Land Rover has got way more power. Yeah, but if you put the weight ratio and the long wheelbase and all that into it, then, you know what I mean, that changes the whole scenario. The ratios change because the length of the wheelbase and the weight of the thing and how it's weighted in relation to its power in the low gears makes it better for going up and down. Because you don't want weight, do you? You don't want weight when you're trying to go up and down snowy hills.
Exactly. You're doing this sort of stuff at 5 miles an hour or less. And, you know, because it's low-powered, little tiny engine, light, like you say, you get on an A road and it's struggling to do 60 and it's all noisy and air noise and tyre noise and it's all over the place. And it's like, this is horrible. You're like, well, yeah. You stick it on a motorway and it's terrifying. But that's not what it's built for. Anyway, let's stop talking about cars, especially boring old crap ones.
Yeah, but it's true about standards. It's like there's no guarantee that what you're going to buy, just because it costs a lot of money, that there isn't something that's a lot cheaper than it that will match it. There's no guarantee of that. You know, that was shown with Ferrari. It was like, I mean, if you look at people with talking about speed and stuff like that, some of the Japanese companies, Japan again, came out with cars, and some of the more smaller European sports car builders came out with cars that could match Ferrari and that for top speeds and stuff like that. Now, they may not have the badge, they may not have all the luxuries, all of them, but they could match it on a straight run for speed. Do you know what I mean? Yet it's not going to cost you a couple of $100,000 to buy one, if you know what I mean.
And you're stuck in 80s pricing. Now, the Super Saloon's 200 grand and the Ferraris are 500 to £1 million.
Yeah, exactly. No, my pricing I knew was really dated.
I remember the days when a Ferrari was 100 grand, but that's like late 80s, isn't it?
Yes, it is. Yes, it is.
Like the baby Ferrari would be 90 grand in British money, and the V12 would be 112 grand, and you're like, wow, over 100 grand. A house costs that, a good house.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. But there you go. Like, I mean, would the ratio of house to car now, if you talk about a good house in London, that would cost a lot more than what it would cost for a Ferrari?
I'd be surprised. The ratio is probably about the same. So,
is it?
Good house costs about £1 million. So it depends on the area. Obviously, varies wildly. Where I am, it's particularly expensive, or top 10 at least. Well, a normal house costs £500,000 here. It's ludicrous. Whereas a good house costs £1 million. Well, that's the same with Ferraris. The mid-range Ferrari, spec'd up, costs £500,000. And the good Ferrari costs 800 to £1 million. That's how it is now. Same as houses. It's weird.
Yeah, I suppose you have a point. I always prefer the Lamborghinis anyway.
Me too.
Not that matters. I always like the Lamborghinis symbol and everything, just something about them.
It's a better car to drive. Well, I drove both. My wife hired a couple for me to drive around a track, which was good fun. And there was all sorts of other people there with cars, which I tried. I got to try like 1,000 horsepower Evo, which was bonkers and terrifying. Anyway, the two cars that I was interested in, because at the time I was a reasonably high-flying rep, so in my mind, well, one day I might be buying one of these cars. That was literally what I had the mindset of. So I turned up in my, I don't know, couple-of-month-old S5, and it was fast, but I'm like, I want to see if this is actually faster. Now, as you've just described, they weren't faster, right? As strange as that would say, they just did different things. They could go around corners really quick, right? The comparison I like to make, because I remember Clarkson making it before I did these test drives, if you want to call them that. They weren't. I was just razzing cars around on a track. Anyway, Clarkson pointed out that the way he phrased it was, you go around a corner in a Ferrari with a very serious face, you go around a corner in a Lamborghini gurning. That was how he put it, right? Well, it's true. So in this Ferrari, there was a particular hairpin on this track, right? And when I got an instructor with me, and he's telling me, you know, how to feather the accelerator and balance the car and push it through this hairpin as fast as possible in this Ferrari. and it's just grip, 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 and you're trying to push it that little bit more, while you're gripping and gripping and gripping through this corner, right, in this Ferrari, and it's all super serious, right? You're concentrating. Okay, then you get into the Lamborghini and do the same corner, right? Now, but just by chance, there was a little bit of rain that had started to come down when I got into this Lambo, and the instructor knew it. So when you get to the same hairpin, I'm expecting him to try and, focus my attention on exactly how much acceleration, and definitely no brakes at this point. No, off the brakes now, completely off. That's how the instructor was with me in the Ferrari. In the Lambo, he's like, oh, it's raining now. He says, bury the throttle when I'm halfway through this hairpin, right? He just shouted it at me. So I plamped my foot on the accelerator, and all four wheels started like, what would you call it? We call it wheel spin. I don't know what you'd term it, but when they're not gripping, they've all released their grip and are spinning on the spot as you go around the corner at 60 miles an hour. And you're looking out the other side window as you go around, because you're going sideways now with all four wheels spinning and spray coming up the side windows. And the instructor's going, woohoo! Right? Because we're four-wheel power sliding around this hairpin. And I'm just exhilarated. It's just so much fun, right? Now, obviously, if I hadn't had an instructor there, I wouldn't have known to just plant my foot hard down on the throttle at that very moment. And because he shouted at me, I did it. The car did exactly as he expected. But it was so much more fun than keep it on the level, keep it on the limit, keep it on a little bit more. Right, now plant it now, accelerate out, keep on this line. None of that. Just fucking plant it, and we'll slide around this corner very slowly compared to the Ferrari. I mean, don't get me wrong, you're probably doing 45 miles an hour sideways in the Lambo as opposed to 60 miles an hour in the Lambo, in the Ferrari. So you're like, yeah, okay, so you are going faster through that bend in the Ferrari. But who cares? It's like you're never actually going to be in a competitive race in either of these cars. Who cares? So therefore, which one's more fun? And the Lambo sounded a million times better. It's got a V10. So it just sounded brilliant. It sounded amazing. So much so that they had a stock Lambo. And when we were driving from the where they do all the lecture about how safe you need to be, to the actual track, they had to cross a public road. And they stopped, and they had to put, this is a stock car, there was no fancy exhaust on it, it was stock. They had to put these extensions on that muffled the back of the exhaust. And they just got so tired of being pulled over because of the noise that it made. And this is, like I say, they hadn't done anything to it. It just came out of the factory breaking all UK noise regs. And that's how it's sold. So it just looks so stupid going across this public road with like 2.5 foot extensions out the back of the car that are like literally hanging out the back of it, so it doesn't make too much noise as it goes over this public road. It's really stupid looking.
I think that the Ferrari was always better on corners, but on a straight run, if I remember correctly, its top speed, the Lamborghinis, maybe not so much now, but for a long time, the Lamborghini was beating everybody. No one could beat them. Like the Countach was the fastest car in the world for a long, let's say commercial car, not obviously F1, but the fastest car in the world was the Countach for a long time. When I was a kid, that was my favorite car, because what was the Cannonball Run movies? They had that in it, So, but I do remember. It's funny you're saying that. I do remember movies, and they often show Ferraris going around corners in a movie, and a lot of the shots would be of going around a corner. But when it comes to Lambos, it was about taking off and just passing everything else in a straight line, or going up a hill. So it might go around the corner, but slowly go up a hill, and it just looked good. And it makes a bit of sense now why I remember Ferraris going around corners and Lambos going in straight lines. Because
you guys are crazy. It depends on the drivers. Depends on the driver.
Maybe.
Thanks.
It may go faster, but it depends on who's driving. My friend Chris Gator was the greatest driver in the world, and he'd get behind a vehicle at anything and beat you. Maybe not in a straightaway, but if you're talking about a race through the neighborhood, he was beating you with anything he had.
But we're talking about Ferraris and Lambos. We're not talking about the local banger that you put into the, you know what I mean?
I know
Well, they
what you're
are, though.
talking about, but it still depends on the driver.
They are bangers, though. That's the thing, right? So I remember seeing a Murcielago in a garage that's just around the corner from me. It's shut down and subsequently turned into apartment buildings. But when it was a car dealership, they had a black Murcielago in there. And I'm walking past and I'm like, I've never really looked at a Murcielago. I don't think I've ever even got up close to one. So I went up to the window and started peering through with my wife. And the owner just happened to see me. He's like, hello. I'm like, sorry, mate, I just want to look at the Lambo. I've never really seen one up close. He's like, come in. So he's obviously just acquired this car because he's a dealer and, you know, I'm just a punter who may buy it. So he might as well show it off because he's got it, right? So he's got nothing better to do. He starts showing me around this Lamborghini Murcielago. I'm like, first thing I spotted was all the arm on the windscreen wiper was all rusted out and missing all the paint. I'm like, that looks crap. Anyway, it wasn't a very old car, but he starts walking me around it, and I says, I can look at the engine. So he pops the back, lifts up the engine compartment, shows it off, and at a glance, immediately it looked wicked. There's all this carbon fibre everywhere, it just looked so nice. And I said it to him, I was like, wow, that looks amazing, all that carbon fibre. And he laughed, and he went, no. And he just puts his finger behind one of the pieces and just flicks it. And it sort of rattles around. He says, come here. And he brings me around to the side of the car so I can just sort of peer in and over behind this bit of carbon fibre. And it's zip tied to like bits of metal that are all really badly welded behind this piece of carbon fibre. And I was like, oh, God, that's awful. He says, yes, it's the whole car. He says, the whole car's like that. And then he said a sentence that I'll never forget. He says, held together with zip ties and dreams. But it was awful.
It's about whether you can, it's about whether you can
sounds
afford
like the
one.
globe.
That's all that matters.
Well, one of the distinct things is, right, when if you ever get a chance to sit in one of those, I don't know if they're still like that now because they've changed a lot, but this particular car was very old Lamborghini-esque in the respect that the way that the gearbox works is it's pointing towards the front of the car. So it's a rear engine car, but the gearbox points forwards. So that means that it's protruding into the cockpit or the engine cabin or whatever you want to call it. So you've got this enormous triangle-shaped section where you sit that's obscuring where you sit. And as a result, the whole car, the way the seat is positioned is sort of pointing off-centre. You're sort of pointing inwards because you've got to tilt the seat to put it around the gearbox. So as you get into this car, it kind of all seems wrong. Now, don't get me wrong, it's so cool because the doors open upwards and it's a Lambo, right? It's a V12 Lambo. So there's nothing uncool about it. But as you get up close and personal with it, it's also very crap. The way the dashboard's all sort of shrunk, the leather's shrunk around itself and it's all wrinkled and not quite fitting properly. And that is how it is. You know what I mean? There's just things about it that are crap. The design, like I say, with the gearbox, you're like, this feels wrong. Was he been in a crash? No, that's the gearbox. There, you see this big lump right next to you. Oh, right, I see.
You know what? Because they're made for...
I know the moment is past. I'm going to bow my way in here with you.
Thank you. Please do it.
Chocolate. I know the moment is past, but that was priceless.
Exactly. I heard you, Chocolate.
I was coming back to it. I heard it too. I was coming back to it.
I tuned it out entirely.
Does sound like the globe.
Held together by what?
Zip ties and dreams.
Zip ties and dreams.
The Lamborghini.
Yo, Chuck, you should use that in your next song you make. Somehow incorporate that. That's classic.
I don't know. I'm going to use it today on my show. Take ownership of it. Shit.
No,
that's so easy, yo.
Hey, like,
you got a show tonight?
What up, Eli?
Yeah.
I did a full-on call to action where I promoted all sorts of stuff, and I didn't promote your show. I'm really sorry.
Oh, that's okay. I got up late. You were already done.
What are you covering?
No worries.
What are you covering?
Nothing major. This week I said was going to be squirrely because I got a lot of bow stuff to do, and Oh, I don't know. Something will pop up. You can bet that.
We know it's not covering time bandits.
Yeah, I'm really looking forward to that.
That's what we're not covering, yes.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to that. I really want to promote that when it comes out, because I think that's like kind of a, your black swan, and it's the next. I know we've covered it before, but I feel that time is more appropriate now than ever. I don't know how to phrase this.
It's the next backbreaker.
It's time for this.
Yeah, I didn't want to say that because the pun's so obvious, but there's an appropriate moment in our journey that the Time Bandits explanation for how the world has been mapped it's now, isn't it? It's very appropriate. It's of the moment, even though we have covered it before.
Well, if
the time is now.
Out, maybe.
Try one more time, Brian. I know it's the third attempt.
Yeah, well, Adam is likely to end up subcontracting it out because he's not doing it. And then none of you heard what I said. A Globorghini.
Yeah, we heard it.
Globorghini.
Yeah, I got it. Again, I chose to ignore it. Do you not like us talking about cars then, Gimme?
No, it's okay. But it just went on for a little bit too long, and that was
really
perfect.
I will remind you of said sentiment when we're next talking about bows or food.
No, it was okay. Enjoyed it. It just got a bit long in the tooth, and I thought chocolate stamped it properly.
Agreed.
Well, it's not like we're being bombarded with a plethora of globe evidence and proof C's and,
Yeah.
Smoking them if we got them.
Plethora is coming from...
The chocolate's got out the ghetto.
The plethora is coming from, what do you call it? What's that thing again? Mandela. That's the plethora. Plethora of
Why'd
evidence.
Why'd you bring it up then? Oh, God. Why'd you bring it up? It's like ether. It's like you moan about, don't want to hear about this ether. Like, I know I'm now going to be doing the very thing I'm criticising, but it is because it is a very strong example, even with me bringing it up now. We very rarely cover NASA. We don't sit around all day saying, oh, look what they're doing now. Do we, Neil? Yeah? Now, I know by saying that, I've literally highlighted it in the way I'm criticising you for doing when you bring up ether, or in this case, Mandela effect. Yeah? Step away from the tards, Neil. Step away.
No, well, just the way you said plethora reminded me of a text I got that nobody's addressing the plethora amount of evidence we have of Mandela. Everybody's just hand-waving it. So that's all I want to say.
But it has nothing to do with the topic. It has nothing to do with the geometry and physics of the world. So
that's correct.
Just use their own logic against them. Let me just deal with this for Neil. Right. If you take how it's explained, that the timelines, let's just keep it in a simple way that I can concisely summarize it, even if it's incorrect in ways that don't matter, right? Let's say that the timeline has changed and a verse in the Bible has therefore changed because of a timeline change. But I remember the old version, and I can demonstrate how the old version was what everyone else remembered, because there's everyone else talking about it as the old version. Okay, that's a rough rendition. So if you're going to suggest that everyone's memory of the event is correct, and in your examples, that's when they remembered it to be correct, couldn't you also suggest that the change in their perception is the Mandela effect and not the inferred incorrect rendition that they're referring to? In other words, where they're inferring a timeline change, you just infer a memory change. Because by doing so, that is basically exactly what is Mandela effect. But you're just taking the power away from the timeline and putting the power on the memory. But if you phrase it in the same way they do, suddenly Mandela's changed your memory. AKA your memory's not that great. Do you see what I mean? Take their concept and make it about their memory rather than about a timeline. Does that make sense, Neil?
Yes.
If you do it in the way they do it, i.e. pay attention to what they use to justify their belief in Mandela, you can then use the same standard for your justification in the Mandela mind effect, because that's how you'll be paraphrasing it back to them. But instead of it being perfect memory, crappy timeline, or change in timeline, it's perfect timeline, just crappy memory. I mean, Mandela effect memory. Do you see what I mean?
Yeah, it wasn't plethora, it was preponderance.
Plethora, preponderance, there's a whole bunch of these trigger words that I hear. Framework, logical framework, model.
Background medium.
No, I mean ones that are transposed onto all sorts of different subjects. By bullshitters.
Well, see, the thing about it is with something like the Mandela is that, let's just say you watched a comedy that referenced something from a famous movie. And in the comedy that came after the main movie, they said a line, a famous line from the movie, slightly incorrect. And everyone can remember what was said in the comedy because it was more recent than what was said in the movie that they were referencing.
That's what they're doing.
You know what I mean? That's the kind of thing that can happen. That can happen. I don't, I can only give my examples of what happened with Muhammad Ali and the news stories here and whatever. But the point is that can happen, that it can be referenced wrong in a comedy or something after that. And that's a more recent thing in your memory. So that's what you reference with your memory. You're not going to...
The only reason for me that doesn't really work is that, like, especially because me and my boys growing up, like, we were big on quoting movies. Like, we could literally, sounds silly, but we could literally talk to each other in movie quotes, right? So those are very big to get accurate. You know what I mean? So, like, if a comedian is going to reference one of these movie quotes, for it to be wrong just doesn't, like, how do you reference a movie quote and make it and mess it up? You know what I'm saying?
Oh, you do with Star Wars. You say you said Luke, and it's not. It's no, I am your father. So what were you quoting the movie wrong?
Well. Chocolate, I remember it as, this is my memory. I'm not trying to claim Mandela effect. I'm saying this is my memory. I remember, no, Luke, pause, I am your father. That's how I remember it. Exactly like that. So, no, Luke, pause, I am your father.
There goes the trifecta Mandela.
You know, every conversation I've had lately. Oh, sorry.
No, I was just going to point Neil in the right direction, but go ahead. You flip it around and just point out, that's your crappy memory, isn't it, Neil? But I was going to say, if it was Brian making the example that was pro-Mandela, you just ask him based on what standard. And then once he's given you a standard, you can then say, oh, no, well, this is your poor memory standard. In other words, you attribute, if it's going to be Mandela effect. Brian didn't take that affirmative position. You took it on his behalf. I'm just going to explain away when I've got you waiting in the wings, Eli. Sorry. Go ahead. That was Eli, wasn't it? Has he buggered off?
No, I'd say he
Eli.
Can't talk or something, might be busy.
Have you told Neil what we managed to get through last night, Brian?
I didn't, because the honour is yours, Adam. I was only a participant in it. The honour is yours, so I didn't want to say anything about it.
Well, because you buggered off early, Neil, we spent a bit of time, me and Brian, going through Revelations 1 all the way through to 13 from the reading. This, I would suggest, is another...
I'm sorry, why wasn't I invited to this obvious Christian meeting? I feel very put out here.
You're not the right sort of Christian, Nathan.
Am I not the right sort of Christian?
No.
I feel very offended.
There's certainly parts of your doctrine that I find offensive, and therefore you won't be invited to any of our special...
I will be expecting a written apology.
There you go.
If it makes you feel better, I wasn't invited either. I just happened to be there. And
I couldn't get rid of him.
You couldn't get rid of me.
I couldn't set up a room on my own.
You know he's Catholic, right?
So this would be the third point, which is just genuine confusion. Yeah, that you interpret what somebody else has done as a Mandela effect. So we've got some pastor that's been touted about because he refers to the King James Bible. And I think the phrase that was being related to was Revelation 1:13, which in every other Bible refers,
which is what?
To it says lampstands in the sentence, but the King James version says candlesticks.
I'm going to go with
just give a little bit more
useful.
detail?
I'm going to go with useful on a bedside table for $100.
That's it.
Just a second. What Adam is trying to say is that in the new version of King James, or the newer King James, it says 7 golden lampstands, and in the old original King James, it says 7 golden candlesticks, and that's where there is. He's going to tell you about this pastor now and where there's an issue with this. Go on, Adam. I just wanted that because I don't think that point was clear.
So is this guy who reads, he's making completely separate Bible points. It's nothing to do with Mandela. It's just he's citing Revelation 1. And he reads the passage where, in theory, it should say candlesticks. If he's reading straight out of the King James Version, but it doesn't. And he reads the same bit as that every other one Bible says, which is as candle as what's it called, Brian?
Lampstands.
Lampstands. And this is being cited as a Mandela effect. So we went and we listened to it, and we listened to every single word that the pastor said and checked it with the King James Version. Revelation 1:1 is the only other point where he has an issue, and he replaces the word shoe, SHEW, with show. So that it makes sense in English, because nobody says show anymore. It does show that he's not using it. He's quite happy to change a little bit here and there for the sake of sense. So then when you go to Revelation 1:12 and you're looking at this, it does say in the King James candlesticks. Now, all the others say lampstands, except the Darby translation, which is the straightforward literal translation from the Greek. No attempt to put additional meaning or make the sentence make more sense. It's just done as a straight literal translation. And that one says golden lamps. So that is the actual Greek. Now, every other one says lampstands, and the King James says candlesticks. And as I said to Brian, that makes sense to me. This is a guy that's studies his Bible, reads it well, and has probably got an issue with candlesticks, recognizing that they're a finite thing that's burning, not the thing that supports the flame. Maybe the point of that, and maybe he disagrees with that part of the King James. He's a learned man. He's bothered to, go through this, and every other Bible says lampstands, except the King James. And I think that can have a different meaning to it. And most fundamentally, the original Greek doesn't say that. The original Greek just says golden lamps. But because he says it doesn't say candlesticks, they're saying this is a Mandela effect and it's being cited. Now, the issue I've got with that being evidence is it's a man reading it, as I've just described, why you may have just said those words. What we've not got is a look at the Bible that he's supposedly reading from, which
Exactly. If only there was an individual on YouTube that did etymological studies and went back to things like the Greek and Hebrew and looked at what it originally said. If only such a channel existed.
Well, yeah. See, this is the thing, right?
Oh, there is
one.
Oh, really? No. Who would that be, Neil?
I think the name is Bible U, Paula, Bible literalist.
Really? So Bible literalist, aka Paula, who specifically does etymological studies, where she goes back and checks the original text to see what it actually said prior to men changing it. Like almost like the real life actual study version of someone claiming Mandela effect when they've done no research. It's like that's pretty much what she is, isn't it, really? Amazing that.
Well, see, the thing about it is that the conclusion me and Adam, well, I came to anyway, and Adam, I think, agreed with me, was that if I was in this man's position, considering how learned he is, I would have said lampstands. And the reason is that in the original Greek, right, if you translate it directly, which, as Adam pointed out, the Derby does this, is that it's lamps, 7 golden lamps. Then in King James, the original King James, it says 7 golden candlesticks. But then the new updated King James, or whichever one it is from then on in, the rest of them say 7 golden lamp stands. Now, the stands part only come from the sticks part, I think, from the candlesticks. So instead of saying 7 golden lamps, it went to 7 golden candlesticks to 7 golden lamp stands. Now, I reckon the man said, instead of saying candlesticks, I reckon he said lamp stands. Now, he would have preferred to say lamps because that's more in line with the original 7 golden lamps, because it's in line with the original Greek. But if he said lamps, people may go, but it's lampstands. So he could either say candlesticks or lampstands, and people would understand it. A lot of people wouldn't understand why he would say just lamps, because they may not have ever researched the original Greek, where it translates to English as just 7 golden lamps. So he said lamp stands so people would understand it. So the lamp stands, the stands part was so people would understand it, but the lamps part was so he was keeping in tradition with the original Greek. So he was completely avoiding the candlesticks as much as possible. That's what if I was in his position, would have said the same thing, regardless of what's written on the page in the King James.
There's a 60s version that says the neon will lay down with the lamp.
Yeah, but Adam, what do you think? That was my thinking. I think, Adam, you kind of agreed with me.
I totally agree. It strikes me as the sort of thing that I do. I've come across that passage and I've bothered to appraise that passage. Moving forwards, I'm going to remember what I bothered to research from the original Greek, and probably subconsciously that'll slip in. I can't use that as evidence of a Mandela effect. I can use that as a well-schooled man who is more than capable of using his knowledge in conjunction with the King James.
And it's critical, this detail, really, isn't it? I mean, to the story in that. It is critical to the story, this particular detail, isn't it? I mean, it is very important.
Well,
I mean, no one's answering me. In the scheme of things, this is almost as important whether or not he said Luke in Star Wars. Is nobody going to acknowledge how important this detail is?
No, it's not important at all. That's the point.
Excuse me. I think you'll find it's critically important.
All right, I've entered the conversation. What am I missing?
Right, you want to go? You want us to fill you in the last 15 minutes of conversation, do you?
Enough for me to answer your last question.
Revelation 1, verse 12. King James says, candlesticks. Bloke reads out lampshades on a 20, 30-year-old copy of his sermon.
Hold on, just Eli. Hold on. Eli, did any of that sentence that Adam just said make any sense to you at all?
I'm trying to make it make sense. Something about a candle and it was a lampshade as a I guess what do you call that when they rewrite? I don't know.
That's a pretty good summary. I think you've got the general idea.
Perfect.
That's the Mandela effect all at once. Lampshades now.
He did pretty well for considering the small little bit he heard. He got it at least 45% right.
You gotta listen to and this is why I've been killing it, because all Nathan had to say was, "Hey, take the argument this way." And every conversation I've had in the last week or two has been like at maximum 15 minutes, because I'm just looking for a contradiction. Since you're not gonna let the penny drop anyway, I may as well make the contradiction clear. So it's like you gotta listen to what's being said, and you gotta fish for the little two words that make sense.
Because you know it's coming, right?
Yeah. That was QE, like.
So I've got the next one anyway, Bright. I went and explained to the guys on Flatsoids afterwards. And the next one to look at is the use of the word matrix in the King James Bible with the use of the word X. And that's in Exodus 25:36. So should the letter X and matrix be there? Does that word exist yet? That's the next claim, that word doesn't exist until the 1950s. I know you could have matrices if you're talking mathematics, so you don't need the X. But that's the next claim I'm going to.
And did they accept your logic on the last one? Did they accept that was?
Yeah.
Are they still?
Well, that wasn't there. I said it on the show a little bit, and then I gave a much more detailed rundown in the after show. And the guys went, "Okay, yeah, that seems actually fairly plausible explanation in that video." You see, that's a lot more plausible explanation based on the preponderance of evidence that you've got than somebody's gone back in time and altered the Bible.
Yeah, it is. It makes far more sense than that. I have to say, yeah. Don't get me wrong. I have no idea what's possible in the world and what isn't. But when it comes to that, I mean, it's obvious. I'm not a Christian, and it became obvious to me very fast that the guy just has such a high standard that he wanted to use the word lamp.
Brian, they sound like a bunch of nutters, and that's what bothers me. It's no different than people claiming ice walls and all the other nonsense that goes with the Feast of Nonsense. You're going to stand as a flat earther, stop looking like a nutter. Stick with things you can prove.
Well, I wouldn't say that about them. Like, they just... Come on, Eli.
No, I'm sorry, because I know, I realize what you guys are talking about, but I'm just thoroughly excited about like the direction of the conversation lately. Because I can hear when others on our side are struggling with trying to have a conversation with these people, but when I enter the conversation, they have no choice but to concede or just leave. And it's because there's nowhere to go. And I realize as I'm utilizing these arguments, I'm like, actually, this is exactly how QE argued it, except no people don't like his temperament. Actually, Nathan said this exact same thing in this exact same way, as short as I did, but I didn't get how powerful it was at the time. It's like when things are effective, but it's short-lived, it's like people don't like that. They like the fight. They like a good fight. They don't like Mike Tyson knock somebody out in 1 minute,
What are you talking about? Cutting off the argument at the knees quickly?
Well, okay, for instance, when QE said the Black Swan was going to be totally, when we start talking about sextants, it's going to come back around, right? So they're saying, "Ooh, what refraction?" Right? And so typically, the rune kind of gets swept up in this wave where now everybody's talking about refraction, trying to argue the point that the opponent made versus just sticking to their point. It's like, well, what you're talking about, sir, has nothing to do with this claim here, because you see this claim right here is talking about a tangent. That is how a line of sight to the horizon is. That's what it is. but you're telling me it's not. So not only did I say the claim is incorrect, you're also saying the claim is incorrect.
Just start thanking
Clearly
them for
right here in this
concessions, man.
citation, yeah, I'm
Just
like,
start
in this
thanking them.
citation, it said what are lines of sight useful for? What are tangents useful for? The first example they gave are angles of elevation. Like, so